Chapter 319. The Devil Ray was wrapped in a whistling stream of air as it streaked across the sky above the viewing platform. It tilted its body slightly, and its flat body passed through the frame structure. Its momentum dissipated amidst the wave-like undulations. It hovered above the pool and slowly descended. Luo Nan's feet didn't move. The Devil Ray stirred its back muscles like a conveyor belt, sending Luo Nan down. Luo Nan only staggered a bit when he slid down from the edge of its pectoral fins. Xuelei had been waiting to the side for a long time. He promptly went forward to support Luo Nan. He was only wearing a thin round neck shirt, but his body was covered in sweat from anxiety. He only let out a breath of relief when he firmly grasped Luo Nan's arm, but another wave of energy rose up. "Nanster, have you gone crazy?" Luo Nan's voice suddenly dropped an octave before he could finish speaking. "Your eyes." "I'm fine." Luo Nan indicated for the Devil Ray to sink into the ocean and enter the central crystal pillar. He broke free from Xuelei's support and walked to a slightly drier place by the side of the pool, through the surging pool water. Luo Nan's eyes were still burning and aching when he landed, but he blinked a few more times. The cool autumn wind blew past, and soon there was a layer of coolness. It was like rolling beads, like a film of water. It permeated the moisture layer by layer. There was a tingling sensation in the middle, but it greatly diminished after a while. His eyes, forehead, and face were all soaked with coolness. It was quite comfortable. Luo Nan didn't think it was a big deal. The coupling electricity between the two gears could tear, but it could also repair glue. The current control wasn't too precise. Perhaps the first wave was damage and all sorts of tearing, but the second wave of electricity could be generated and welded together. On the other hand, it was possible for the gears to explode just as they were getting better. But since it was coupling, the exchange of information and synchronization were natural. The probabilities were shifting toward the good side. This feeling grew more and more distinct as time passed. This was just Luo Nan's own thoughts. Xuelei saw Luo Nan's pupils, and they had a different feeling. Xuelei seemed to be looking at the eyes of a cold-blooded animal. Though they didn't possess long and narrow pupils, the densely woven cracks encircled them. They were like glass balls that could shatter at any time. Xuelei instinctively shivered when he saw this scene. He immediately grabbed Luo Nan and took him to the hospital for an examination. However, in the blink of an eye, the aura from the other side caused his eyelids to twitch. Xuelei composed himself and followed the aura to sense it. When he looked again, it was still the same shattered crack, but it was extremely similar to a cracked layer of ice. At first glance, it looked gloomy, but within it seeped a dense cold light. Occasionally, light waves would jump, like lightning tearing apart the night sky, extremely dazzling. Facing this pair of strange eyes, he didn't know what to say for a moment and subconsciously handed over the notebook in his hand. This was Luo Nan's loose-leaf notebook. Luo Nan had tossed it onto the platform when he leaped onto the Devil Ray's back. Xuelei picked it up and returned it to its rightful owner. Luo Nan gripped the leather cover and laughed, finding it hard to conceal his exhaustion. Xuelei's tone softened a little. "Let's go check it out." "Sure." Luo Nan knew that this was unavoidable, so he agreed quite straightforwardly. Turning his gaze, he saw a woman in Xuelei's Taoist robe sitting on a bench beside the pool. He couldn't help but feel curious. "Senior Sister Tian is still here?" Tianxi heard Luo Nan call her name. She bit her lower lip and raised her head. Her lips were so white that no color could be seen. Her expression was a bit stupefied. It was unknown whether it was the effect of the cold or the power of fear. She had been held hostage by the throat and was on the brink of death several times. Then she fell into the heavenly ocean lake, soaking her entire body. Her knitted clothes were extremely heavy when they entered the water. When she came out, the cold wind blew, making her feel exceptionally cold. Her shoes had already fallen into the heavenly ocean lake. Her slender legs were only covered in silk stockings. Her legs stuck to the cold and wet ground. She was in a sorry state. It was late autumn, and the chill was deep. Though Xuelei had kindly given her Taoist robes to warm her body, she still had her arms and legs clenched together. It was hard to conceal the shivering chill. Xuelei whispered, "She's probably too frightened. She's having a bit of a stress reaction. She just stays there, not moving. I can't persuade her no matter what." Luo Nan frowned when he heard this. He didn't know what to do for a time. His gaze shifted and he saw that the viewing platform had clearly been cleaned up. The corpses of Black Beetle and Puppeteer were gone. The unconscious tourists who had been cleaned up had all been moved away. The traces of battle had been cleaned up. Xuelei understood. He whispered, "Secretary, he arrived not long after you left." She cleaned up the area and arranged for Brother Zhou to keep an eye on things here. A calm man of around 40 years old walked over from the end of the pool. It was Zhou Hu, the person Xuelei spoke of. He was one of He Yuan's bodyguards, as well as her trusted aide. He had met Luo Nan twice before, and he was Tiger Burst's comrade. He was no stranger to Luo Nan. "Brother Zhou." Luo Nan put Tianxi's matter aside and greeted him politely. Zhou Hu's words and actions were steady and appropriate. "Mr. Luo, according to Miss He's instructions, I'll be waiting by your side tonight. I'll do some odd jobs. If there's anything you need, just tell me." Luo Nan didn't refuse. He nodded in thanks. Zhou Hu's gaze swept over Tianxi's body. He had a general idea of the situation. He lowered his voice and said, "Miss He said that this person should be suppressed quite badly. She's still struggling in a hostage situation." Luo Nan thought for a bit when he heard this. He took 2 steps forward. Tianxi's entire body shrunk back when she saw Luo Nan's pupils, which seemed to crack like ice. But she soon came to her senses with a start. She forcefully suppressed her fear and moved closer. She raised her head to look, terrified and pitiful. "Junior, I'm sorry." Tianxi didn't have her usual calm and bright appearance right now. Luo Nan furrowed his brows and bent down slightly. "Senior sister, the weather is too cold. Go change your clothes. Then let's chat some more, okay?" He had already used a hypnotic technique. Tianxi subconsciously grunted. Her mind was inevitably a bit absent-minded. Luo Nan saw this and said, "Leicester, you accompany her." Xuelei shook his head fiercely. He practically didn't put in any effort tonight. Just as he was feeling regret, he made up his mind to stay close to Luo Nan. "Enough. Let's go together." Luo Nan originally didn't have any special opinions about Tianxi. But because of gear and coupling theory, his attitude was greatly different. There was a large shopping center inside Ocean Sky Cloud City. It was very convenient to change clothes. He had climbed the slippery back of the Devil Ray before, and he had put out the fire in gear. His body was covered in mud and ash. His white coat was long since ruined. His face was probably not that good either. He needed to clean it. The group took the elevator down to the shopping center. Luo Nan didn't have any intention of immediately meeting up with He Yuan and the others. The main reason was that the internal channel of the psychic wave network had just been established, and it was about to explode with noisy messages. His previous impulsive actions had already been verified by the large amount of photos and videos he had pulled down from the network. His head sank into a complete mess, and Luo Nan didn't know how to respond for a time. When his emotions were stirred up, he hated that he couldn't pour out the greatness of his mother's work to the entire world. But now that his emotions had ebbed and his reason had returned, he understood that the secrets within were not suitable to be divulged to outsiders. How to respond was truly a troublesome matter. Right now, he was so tired that he didn't want to use his brain. He might as well be willful and slowly talk about it. Xuelei wanted to say something about Luo Nan's actions, but he didn't open his mouth. Zhou Hu completely obeyed Luo Nan's arrangements. As for Tianxi, she was like a marionette. Whatever Luo Nan said, she would do. The group arrived at the 101st floor, found a brand store nearby, and bought clothes. Luo Nan just washed his face and threw away his white lab coat. He just had to make do with everything else for now. As for Tianxi, no matter how much she made do, she still needed to spend some time. The 3 men waited in the store. Xie Junping just so happened to call at this time. He smacked Luo Nan in the face with a question. "Where did you go?" Luo Nan swept his gaze over the dazzling array of women's clothing. "Buying clothes." Xie Junping clearly choked. He paused for a moment before asking, "Where's Leicester?" "He's with me." "What's wrong?" Xie Junping chuckled. Nothing. I was just asking." You two suddenly disappeared. Tang Yi came over just now, but she couldn't find you. Luo Nan thought of something. He tilted his body slightly, and the corner of his eyes swept over the most eye-catching decoration outside the store. It was the crystal pillar in the center of the building. The devil ray swam within it, attracting quite a few customers to stop and watch. Help me ask Xiaofan what the approximate price of the mutant devil ray is. So it really is. Cough cough cough. It's nothing. I'm a bit choked. Xie Junping suddenly raised his voice and forcefully suppressed it. This was the end of Xie Junping. The latter half of his sentence was to deal with his companion. He turned around and forcefully suppressed his voice. He could not help but tremble. He was most likely excited. Nanster, why you? It's really you? Do you know that the internet is about to explode? Xiaofan just got the news. He's in a terrible fix right now. Oh right, he probably didn't recognize you. Then he's really slow. Luonan didn't want to talk too much for now. He reminded Xie Junping, I'll be there in a bit. Don't forget to help me ask the price. He hung up the call after speaking. Luonan admitted that asking Xiaofan for a price was an impulsive idea. He really enjoyed the experience of looking down at gear from the sky. He enjoyed the feeling of its mysteries to his heart's content, and he appreciated the beauty of the building. It would be ideal if he could get his hands on it. Of course, there was a more realistic factor. The mutant devil ray possessed tyrannical fleshly strength, and its body was extremely flexible and tough. Its maneuverability was excellent, and it was quite versatile. It could replace Luonan's frail fleshly body to a large extent, and it could do some confrontational work. In the following period of time, whether or not he had this weapon with him was the key to his survival. Luonan was really a bit tired. He simply sat on a stool in the clothing display area and flipped open his notebook. The flexible e-ink screen lit up. He subconsciously opened the second level of the drawing software. The brilliant river of stars almost blinded his eyes. The heart lantern of the eye's orifice, under the coupling effect, almost swept away the turbid dark clouds in the river of stars and illuminated the 8 poles. Numerous life sketches formed thousands of constellations that revolved inside and outside the format pyramid. The vast star atlas could almost melt a person's mind into it. Luonan didn't look at it in detail. He just let out a low sigh and returned to the upper level of the software. He created a blank interface in passing and the electronic pen sketched out lines. He had just started when he paused. He had a myriad of thoughts, but he didn't know how to arrange his pen. Chapter 320. Luonan raised his head in astonishment. He didn't quite understand. Xuelei continued, the gym master needs to rest for a period of time after moving. The gym doesn't need my help for the time being. The society I'm a member of isn't that interesting. You might as well tell Brother Ping to transfer me over. Wouldn't it be better if we looked after each other? Luonan subconsciously said, having someone look after each other is good. Right now, the ownership of gear was still in the midst of a bidding war. It didn't matter if the Mystic Arts Research Society won in the end, or if the Construction Society took over. Luonan was alone and powerless. He had a trustworthy friend to help him. Hold on. How was this a matter of looking out for each other? Luonan understood Xuelei's thoughts. Xuelei was rushing to be his bodyguard. He admitted that if Xuelei really did protect him, he would be able to make up for the weakness of his body. Coupled with his mental attacks and other methods, he would have no problem getting through tonight's situation. However, Luonan was even more clear on the fact that trouble would not come in the future. If trouble really did come, then it would not be the same as today. It's not just the two of us. Leicester, there are many other situations here. There's also your parents, my aunt's family. Luonan's voice was low. He spoke and spoke, but then his voice was cut off. After his impassioned emotions returned, a myriad of thoughts unavoidably grew in his mind like weeds. Frankly speaking, the HQ's investigation team's tricks had truly shocked him. Forcibly arresting, taking hostages, burning houses. This group of people had no scruples at all. They could do anything. And this was just headquarters. Luonan did not forget that Quantum Corporation, especially Yen Yonghua, had always coveted gear, regardless of their motives. The order of justice seemed to have shrunk back for now, but headquarters was so proactive. As the parties involved, would they really act like ostriches? There were also the various powers that Luonan could not clearly count. He could see from the chaos created by the human-faced arachnid that there were far too many greedy people. It was hard to say when someone would jump out. How were he and Xue Lei going to deal with them? Fine, there was also the Xia City branch. But from today's situation, it was better to beg for help than to beg for help. Even if Yuan and the others did their best to rescue him, they were limited by time and space. It was impossible for them to appear in front of him in the first instance, let alone his family. Luo Nan did not know how to express his worries to Xue Lei for a time. At this moment, Tianxi walked out of the fitting room after changing her clothes. Now was not a good time to pick out clothes, so Tianxi just chose a nearby women's clothing brand and casually matched it. Perhaps it was really cold after falling into the pool. She wore a woolen coat with a turtleneck and a white sweater, which covered her upper body well. She was wearing a dark pleated dress that hung all the way down to her ankles. She was also wearing a pair of high-heeled Oxford shoes that she had bought earlier. She was sweating a little in the warm shopping mall. Her long hair was still damp, and her cheeks were slightly red, as if she had just taken a shower. Tianxi walked step by step until she was before Luo Nan. Her eyes drooped and she spoke softly. "I've kept you waiting." Luo Nan didn't say anything. The matter of Xue Lei transferring to the Order Club wasn't something that could be settled just by talking about it. He closed his notebook and stood up. "Let's go." Mr. Luo. Zhou Hu, who had just gone out, rushed over and handed him a pair of brown glasses that had just been opened. "Your eyes should be covered first." Xue Lei came to a sudden realization. Those patterns are quite horrifying. I should cover them. No wonder Yuan chose Zhou Hu to be her bodyguard. He really was a very careful and thorough person. Luo Nan expressed his thanks, took the glasses, and put them on. He walked toward the elevator first, and Xue Lei and the others followed him. The devil ray spiraled silently in the crystal pillar behind them, following them down. According to the original plan, Luo Nan would be admitted to the hospital for an examination after he returned. But Luo Nan had just spoken to Xie Junping about the matter of the devil ray, so he had to go to the party scene to see the specific situation. Zhou Hu, who was following by his side, had no objections to this. The group soon returned to the 88th floor. According to the schedule of the party, it was time for the warm-up to end and for the party to officially begin. But by the time Luo Nan and the others arrived, the area surrounding the central crystal pillar was clearly a bit chaotic. Buzzing sounds lingered in their ears. Luo Nan contacted Xie Junping, and Xie Junping informed him, "A skylight has been opened in the crystal pillar. Nothing like this has ever happened since the building was completed. Many events have been postponed for the sake of safety." Yao Xir lost face and is cursing right now. Wait a moment. Xie Junping and Hu Huaying were still conversing with Yao Feng. They were unable to get away for a while. Luo Nan swept his gaze around. It was quite a coincidence that the entrance to the elevator they took happened to be near the sofa corner where they first met Yao Feng and He Donglu. There was no trace of the troublesome characters at this time. There were only 2 or 3 strangers sitting there chatting. The sofa corner was quite spacious. There was no problem in resting and discussing. Luo Nan mentioned this to Xie Junping and led Xue Lei and the others over. They prepared to rest there for a while and wait for Xie Junping and the others to come over and rendezvous. Luo Nan and the others turned left, but there was a group of people on the right. They just happened to see them come out of the elevator. Someone immediately let out a strange cry. Heavenly thunder and earthly fire. How fierce. They even changed their clothes. What kind of scene is this? There were 2 of them when they went, but 4 came back. Wah! You can't judge a book by its cover. Zhu Maoshuan's expression grew uglier and uglier as he listened to his friends chatter. Most of them were pointing at Tianxi. Their group had been frightened by Black-Tooth Sunglasses Man. Their drive had been dampened, and they ran out from the 124th floor. It was quite humiliating. They recovered with great difficulty and went up again. But when they pressed the button, a white-collar worker's face was covered in blood. His head was nearly smashed flat, and he had sunk into a deep coma. This gave them yet another shock. They didn't know what had happened up there. Then the police got involved, and the group had no choice but to return to the party venue. The party activities had gone awry. It could be said that their journey was not smooth. Just as they were feeling vexed, they suddenly saw Luo Nan and Tianxi return. They looked like they had seen a ghost. Zhu Maoshuan began to grind his teeth. His friends, who were close to him, saw that his eyes were bloodshot and that he had the appearance of a butcher. Each and every one of them shut their mouths. It made sense when they thought about it. Their relationship had been established, and their clothes had been changed. If Zhu Maoshuan were to get jealous now, wouldn't that be the same as wearing an oily green hat on his head? Zhu Maoshuan stared at the backs of the two people. He didn't move. It would only be more humiliating to tear them apart today. But after today, things would be different. Let's go. Zhu Maoshuan forcefully swallowed his anger, turned around, and left. There were dozens of sharp thoughts stabbing back and forth in his mind. He was just waiting for an opportunity to vent them out. Zhu Maoshuan had just turned around when Zhou Hu and Xue Lei, who had already hidden themselves in the stream of people, turned their heads to glance at him. It was a sensitive time. They obviously sensed such malicious gazes. Zhou Hu even moved closer to Luo Nan's ear and asked, "That person?" Luo Nan shook his head. As long as Zhu Maoshuan didn't immediately rush over to fight, Luo Nan didn't have the leisure to pay attention to him. They arrived at the corner of the sofa in a few steps. Luo Nan wasn't polite. He made a slight gesture and sat down first. His back was pressed against the soft sofa, and he had something to lean on. The feeling of exhaustion was like evaporating steam. It enveloped his entire body in an instant, evaporating all his strength. He unconsciously sighed. He was a bit tired. Nanster? Xue Lei didn't sit. He bent over to look at the color of Luo Nan's face. He was a bit worried. Luo Nan raised his eyelids and looked at Xue Lei's wrinkled face. He laughed involuntarily. The mind comes before the energy. The energy comes before the strength. The weight of exhaustion comes after that. It looks like I've passed today. These were the words of advice that Xue Lei had given him when he first began to learn the cultivation technique of the eye's orifice. Luo Nan had indeed put these words into practice when he faced the enemy today. He didn't consume too much of his strength, but the comprehension and application of order frames, gear coupling, and other concepts consumed an extreme amount of energy. In addition, he had returned to rescue his mother's work. His impatience and surging emotions had damaged his mind. In a safe environment, the accumulated feelings of exhaustion exploded forth. He really wanted to sleep. Xue Lei was probably the one who could understand Luo Nan's state the most. He advised, "Why don't you just sleep for a bit? The damage to your mind will damage your essence and energy. Forcefully holding on is a bottomless pit." Let me clarify a few things first. Sister, he should be here soon. Luo Nan thought about the fact that there was an outsider beside him. He forced his eyelids open and turned to Tian Si. "Senior Sister Tian, I'm sorry for today. I've let you suffer a calamity. However, it's all in the past now. You should be safe for the time being. If Senior Sister you..." Before Luo Nan could express his meaning clearly, an aura came from behind him. A snow-white leg strode over from the back of the sofa. It nimbly crossed over the back of the sofa, and a slender figure suddenly appeared. She wore a very simple t-shirt paired with denim shorts. Autumn was thick, and she wore summer clothes. She was quite willful. There was only one person Luo Nan was familiar with who could dress like this: Zhang Yingying. "What are you looking at?" I rushed over from the seaside. I didn't wear a diving suit. I'm doing you justice. Of course, if you die, I'll change into a suit and collect your corpse. Zhang Yingying sat down next to Luo Nan. She stared at him unwaveringly, carefully sizing him up to see if he was missing any parts. Luo Nan's eyes were nearly unable to blink. He didn't pay much attention to her. He just grunted. If this were any other day, Zhang Yingying would have jumped up a long time ago. But today, she just snorted coldly. She extended her hand and probed Luo Nan's forehead. Her fingertips slid down, and she measured his carotid artery, heart rate, and so on. There was nothing abnormal about this, but Luo Nan's face looked awkward no matter how she looked at it. She sized him up a few times, and she finally discovered a problem. "Why are you wearing glasses?" She reached out to take them off as she spoke. Luo Nan shot a glance at her and saw her face turn stiff. Chapter 321. Bai Hong's condition was very interesting. Luo Nan's mind stirred when he saw Zhang Yingying's special body and soul structure. Before he could fully comprehend it, another person entered the corner of the sofa. A slightly panting voice rang out, Boss Luo, your rhythm is too strange. We can't keep up with it. As he spoke, Papercut's slightly plump body sat down hard, swaying on the sofa. As for Red Fox, he didn't say a word. He just sat on the armrest of the sofa next to Papercut. His gaze swept across Luo Nan's body, going back and forth a few times as he sized him up in detail. Back at Gear, 99% of Luo Nan's mental energy was used to put out the fire. However, he knew very well that these two people, who had once been at odds with him, were the first to rush to the scene. Their attitudes were impeccable. Luo Nan also accepted this favor. He immediately nodded towards the two and took the opportunity to shift his gaze from Zhang Yingying. He temporarily set aside the matter of Bai Hong and put on his glasses. Zhang Yingying was a little confused. She wasn't too clear on what had just happened, but after hearing Papercut's words, she instinctively mocked. You mean to say that he should wait for us to collect his corpse? As she spoke, she tapped her wristband, telling Papercut to pay attention to the time. Papercut pointed at Zhang Yingying and then pointed back at himself. He was speechless at this sort of self-destructive evaluation. Zhang Yingying didn't have the self-awareness to self-destruct. No matter what, she had followed Luo Nan halfway through his fight with those people from headquarters. She had provided him with intelligence and information. It was better than nothing. This group of people could be considered to be quite familiar with each other, so there was no pressure in arguing with each other. She had been tense for a long time tonight. After confirming that Luo Nan was fine, it was proper for her to recuperate and relax. But on the other hand, as the only normal person, Tianxi was very uncomfortable with the sudden appearance of these people. The ring-shaped sofa was mostly closed up. There was only one entrance, forming a relatively private space. Tianxi sat at one end of the entrance. Papercut and Red Fox, who came later, sat at the other end. The distance between them was very close, but there was no communication between them, not even a glance. Tianxi's head was slightly lowered, and her legs were together and slanted. She had a dignified bearing, but half of her body was outside, just like her current situation. As time passed, as the most outstanding self-protection mechanism of human beings, forgetfulness began to play its role. The nightmarish experience gradually became blurry, and Tianxi also pulled herself out of her trance and fear state. Her mind began to work again. The 88th floor was the venue of the Pingjiang district's first-rate school fellowship party. The participants were divided into a few age groups, but their basic identities were students. Among the people who arrived at the sofa corner one after the other, Luo Nan and Shui lay aside, there was only one person who looked a bit like a student. It was the long-legged beauty who glowed with youth. As for the other three, they gave off a strong aura of society. Zhou Hu, whom he had met before, was a 40-year-old uncle. These people surrounded Luo Nan. They were incompatible with the surrounding environment, but they themselves were quite harmonious. They naturally formed a circle. When they sat down, the students who had been whispering in the corner of the sofa felt inexplicably uncomfortable. They quickly got up and left. These people were Ian San and they said, They Xiao Yi, Xiao said. Bye. Were these people like Luo Nan and Puppeteer? Powerful people with inconceivable abilities? These Bai, he of, Yun had Chen. Bai Mo, Tian Yang, of Hua. Tian he. Tianxi couldn't help but guess. The circle she was in contact with was far from the campus or shallow political circle she was familiar with. It was so far that she couldn't understand it. It was even more daunting. Tianxi was adjusting her thoughts when a topic suddenly fell on her. The long-legged beauty, who looked to be a few years younger than her, turned her gaze over. This is the female lead of the first half of the story? She's really not bad. Speaking of which, you seem to have a crush on your sister. How come you've never been a virgin with a younger woman? Luo Nan rolled his eyes even though he was extremely sleepy after hearing these nonsensical words. Tianxi was quite embarrassed by Zhang Yingying's words. Her emotions stimulated her memories. She suddenly remembered that it was this voice that made Luo Nan abandon her in the very beginning. He wanted to cast aside his burden. Tianxi knew that she shouldn't get angry with these powerful people, but she was targeted time and time again. This stimulated her self-esteem from the bottom of her heart. Of course, she wouldn't use an intense method to express it. She just lowered her eyes and sat upright on the end of the sofa. She was calmer and more reserved than before. Her delicate bearing was the most obvious weakness. It was very likely to arouse the protective hearts of the opposite sex. Luo Nan remembered Tianxi mentioning coupling theory. He naturally spoke a few words to help her. Don't joke around. Senior sister Tian is a top student of our school's design institute. She'll be studying next year. It's very likely that she'll be my mother's direct junior sister. Oh, master's aunt. You can't just be an outsider. We share blessings and misfortunes together. Zhang Yingying giggled. Her eyes contained a hidden meaning. Do you understand what I mean? I understand. Why wouldn't I understand? If you hadn't interrupted me just now, I would have already invited her away, okay? No matter what their respective attitudes were, Luo Nan and Zhang Yingying had already reached a consensus. The matter they were about to discuss was far too sensitive. Letting Tianxi stay here would do no good to either of them. Luo Nan roused his spirits and cast his gaze toward Tianxi. Senior sister Tian, you've been tossing and turning quite a bit just now. I'm sure you're tired. It's fine if you don't participate in this party. Go back and rest. His words were more of an order than a concern. Tianxi's mind went blank. She didn't know if she was relieved or regretful. She was just about to nod when the man in the red jacket, who had remained silent all this time, suddenly spoke. The secretary opened a ward at Sacred Heart Hospital. You should go there and get your body examined to avoid any sequelae. Tianxi was stupefied for a moment before she realized that he was speaking to her. She very consciously cast her gaze toward Luo Nan. She wanted to see his attitude. Luo Nan was also puzzled. He looked at Red Fox, and the corner of Red Fox's lips twitched. You can call this procedure. Zhang Yingying immediately changed her position. She sneered. If procedures were useful, then this wouldn't have happened. All right, where's Secretary He? She's the one who called the meeting. Why is she late? She should be at the hospital? Papercut was afraid that Red Fox and Zhang Yingying would quarrel again. He rushed to interrupt and asked Luo Nan, speaking of which, what did you come here for? Did you have to wait until the party ended? I was waiting for news. Luo Nan briefly mentioned the matter of the Devil Ray. I was thinking that it would be safer to have that thing by my side. I really didn't know that you were actually a rich person. Zhang Yingying's eyes went wide. She had a very surprised appearance. Of course, this was sarcasm. Papercut scratched his head as well. Nanster, I'm not saying this, but the mutants on the market have never been sold for less than 10 million. According to the market price of this Devil Ray. Before Luo Nan could finish speaking, Xie Juanping's loud voice reached everyone's ears. Nanster, are you okay? Xie Juanping and Hu Huaying hurriedly walked over. Xie Juanping saw that there were many figures in the corner of the sofa, vaguely resembling Luo Nan. Xie Juanping didn't think too much about it and simply asked. The words came out of his mouth, but he discovered that 6 or 7 pairs of eyes had cast their gazes over. All of them were unfamiliar faces. No, there was one who looked more familiar. Zhang Yingying? Yo, sheep's head. Hello. Zhang Yingying giggled as she waved her hand. She turned to express her admiration for Luo Nan for the second time. You actually let him go negotiate the price with someone. Before Luo Nan could speak, Xie Juanping exploded first. What do you mean by actually? Zhang Yingying rubbed her fingers. How much? Xie Juanping's voice immediately lowered an octave. 60. 60 million. Zhang Yingying spread her hands. Hee. Red Fox, who was sitting furthest away, withdrew his legs to make a path. He indicated for Xie Juanping and Hu Huaying to go in and sit. He even opened his mouth to evaluate. The price is quite fair. Papercut also said, the ghost-faced electric eel we caught at 8 Rocks Reef last year was more or less the same price. It was sold for 40 million. However, the Devil Ray can be used both in the air and in the water. The price is hard to estimate. Zhang Yingying shrugged. What are you guys discussing with such a serious face? In any case, a certain someone can't afford it. Even if he could, he wouldn't be able to raise it. That's true. Papercut turned his head to look at the Devil Ray swimming mightily within the central crystal pillar. This mutant had been swimming in the nearby waters ever since Luo Nan sat here. It had never left. But in this way, the shoal of fish suffered a calamity. The strength of a mutant with a strengthened body is directly proportional to its appetite. It can eat several tons of fresh meat in a day. It's very hard to provide for it. I need it. Luonan stared at the devil ray. His voice was low. The effectiveness of my order frame can only manifest on the mental plane. I need an external device like the devil ray to be able to have some influence on the material plane. Some. Red Fox repeated these two words. He didn't understand what an order frame was, but his chest felt stifled. Right now, he was the only one who had to go to the hospital for an examination besides Luonan. Out of everyone present, Zhang Yingying was the first person to come into contact with the concept of order frames, gears, and coupling. She had been mulling over it all this time. She seemed to understand it, but she wasn't. Now that she heard Luonan mention this concept, it was as if electricity had suddenly passed through her mind. A light bulb lit up. The devil ray is an exoskeleton to you? Luonan was stunned. He answered, You can say that. Zhang Yingying's thoughts were clear. Her thoughts spun in succession. For you, the devil ray is just a module or a plug-in. The order frame is the energy source and overall control system? How do you do it? Luonan was very happy to explain a few related theories, especially when Zhang Yingying's description was very reliable. He immediately said, the generation, transmission, and output of energy and information are produced by the coupling of gears. Of course, gears themselves can produce. No, what I mean is, this is your first time seeing a mutant devil ray. How do you make it work for you? How do you make it do whatever you want? Zhang Yingying stared at him with wide eyes. Is your true ability similar to that of a puppeteer, a beast tamer and so on? Or are you a mind controller? Red Fox raised his eyebrows in the sofa corner when he heard the last three words. Paper Cut grimaced in pain. Zhou Hu looked pensive. The others all had blank expressions. What's a mind controller? Chapter 322. Hearing Luonan use the theory of gears and order frames to explain Ouyang Chen's great work, the group of people in the corner of the sofa blinked, furrowed their brows, and scratched their heads. Their expressions were all different, but they couldn't avoid making eye contact. The atmosphere became even more bizarre. Zhang Yingying relied on the flash of inspiration just now to barely keep up with Luonan's train of thought. She casually tugged at a strand of hair and asked, According to what you're saying, President Ouyang is using the heaven and earth. Yes, the spatial structure as an exoskeleton to control? The explanation of formatting theory is that the self-format distorts the heaven and earth format. Perhaps the heaven and earth format can also be explained as the coupling relationship of several relatively independent gear sets. President Ouyang has changed their originally distant space-time distribution. Luonan suddenly froze when he spoke to this point. Several seconds passed before he spoke in a low voice. It's the space-time distribution. Through this method, the lag brought about by the space-time distribution can be reduced. Here we go again. Zhang Yingying rubbed her forehead with her hand and sighed silently. Luonan's state of talking to himself was very satisfying to disgust his enemies, but it was far too heartless to use it on his own people. Fortunately, this state did not persist for too long. Luonan raised his head and twisted his face to look her straight in the eye. His brows even furrowed. That mind controller. Is he the same as a psychic? As long as you set your mind to someone, there will be no end to the trouble? Paper Cut spat out with a pft. Zhang Yingying's mind spun. Oh, it really is like this. In a thousandth of an instant, she really did feel a little apologetic. Then she chuckled as she extended her elbow and placed it on Luonan's shoulder. Half of her body moved closer to him, and she adopted the attitude of a brother. Don't make random associations. Speaking of which, the space-time distribution of gear sets is a very interesting way of saying it. Hey, isn't this the information that the people from headquarters want to know? Is it really okay for you to say it like this? I'm not saying it because some people have terrible attitudes. Luonan didn't believe that the logic world was some sort of secret. Perhaps Wang's actions could barely be considered a secret, but Yuan had never warned him about this matter. The people from headquarters simply didn't have the patience to ask. Zhang Yingying pursed her lips. You make it sound so easy. I asked the boss about Wang's matter, but she didn't explain it in detail. That might be because she doesn't understand formatting theory. Luonan knew that the boss Zhang Yingying spoke of was the illustrious and famous Her Majesty Empress Wu. But out of a subtle thought, he still made a joke. From what I can see, the facts are quite clear. It was President Ouyang's actions that gave Wang convenience. He took the opportunity to lock onto a place that was originally very far away. He took a shortcut and jumped over. No one could truly understand his formatting theory and coupling theory, but his descriptions were logical and clear. Zhang Yingying and the others could imagine what would happen. Luo Nan didn't want to be labeled as a mind controller in his muddle-headedness. He had no concept of this title at all, so he asked, "What's the occupation of a mind controller?" It can be considered as an advanced level of hypnotist. They specialize in manipulating people's minds and are highly sought after in the various orders. The weaker ones can be in charge of preaching and preaching, the stronger ones can become the core priests, and there are a few who can directly become the leader of the order. By the way, we haven't had this lesson yet? The one who spoke wasn't in the circle of sofas. Instead, it was Bamboo Pole, who had just walked into the corner of the sofa. He was an expert in the study of secret orders. He had given Luo Nan the shorthand of the important people of the world course. The strong ones of the various major orders were a very important component. Luo Nan shook his head. He had no impression of them. He saw He Yueyin at this time. She was by Bamboo Pole's side, but he felt that she was a bit quiet and low-key. Luo Nan's 4 limbs were weak right now. His body's reactions were slow by half a beat. He could only wave his hand at the two who had arrived as a greeting. Xue Lei, who was by his side, instinctively stood up to give his seat. He was worried that He Yueyin and the others would be polite, so he simply jumped over the back of the sofa and went to the back. Since this was the case, He Yueyin thanked Xue Lei and passed through the aisle of the sofa. She and Zhang Yingying just happened to sit on Luo Nan's left and right. The sofa was soft, and the three sat very close to each other. It was quite crowded. As for Bamboo Pole, he didn't join in the fun. He simply walked over to the bar in the corner of the sofa and occupied one of the only 2 seats. He asked for a martini and beamed as he watched the group of people rub against each other on the circular sofa. Papercut was a bit regretful when he saw this. He also wanted to have a drink or two. He got up and said in a loud voice, "Give me a rum and coke." Bamboo Pole shook his head. "Save a seat. Cragburst will be here in a bit. With his size, he shouldn't be tormenting you guys." Then he waved his hand at Xue Lei, who was behind the sofa. "Leister, how about a cup?" "It's not even a bit yet." Xue Lei wasn't at the age to drink alcohol, and public places were the strictest. He could only politely decline this sort of pastime. Xue Lei walked behind Xie Junping and Hu Huaying as he spoke. The topic of discussion and the strange atmosphere had stupefied the 2 rich kids. They instinctively let out a breath of relief when they saw Xue Lei come over. Xie Junping asked in a low voice, "These are all?" Xue Lei didn't know how to respond for a time. Papercut, who was sitting next to them, put on a smiling face. "We're of the same profession in the society." "Yes, we're just like your Mystic Arts Research Society. Our fields are pretty much the same." Xie Junping went, twice. It was unknown what he was thinking, but his expression was strange. On the other side, He Yueyin spoke in a low voice after sitting down for a few seconds. "I'm sorry, Mr. Luo. This situation has occurred because of my negligence in my work." Luo Nan didn't say anything. He wasn't angry at He Yueyin, but it was absolutely impossible for him to say, "It's okay," at this time. In the end, he still minded. How could he not mind? After experiencing headquarters' shameless methods, Luo Nan's mind was filled with the question of how he should respond when the next wave of enemies arrived. It wasn't just him alone. There was also his aunt and uncle, his relatives and friends living in Xia City, and even Gear, who couldn't be moved. All sorts of fetters had to be taken care of. No matter how one looked at it, it was an impossible task. Before the train of thought was clear, a person's thoughts would naturally trace back to the past. All sorts of if, maybe, if, then, and so on, along with the corresponding emotions of complaint, regret, and so on. Luo Nan didn't have the mental strength to imagine things that didn't happen, but those fuzzy emotions still existed more or less. Following He Yuein's straightforward apology, they were like bad wine that hadn't finished fermenting. They broke through the walls of the barrel and splashed out. He didn't have the leisure to ponder over his words. He spoke bluntly, "I need a solution. Me. My family. My mother's blood and sweat. That group of scum. They can do anything. He had said these words to Shui Lei. He had said them to himself. Now he was saying them to He Yuan. In the beginning, he was speaking rationally. Now, he was venting his emotions. He Yuan responded in a deep voice. President Ouyang has already sealed off headquarters maintenance authority on the psychic wave network. Gong Qi and his group will leave Xia City tomorrow morning. Luo Nan wanted to continue listening, but the words were cut off. He turned his head to stare at her. And then, the branch is currently researching the relevant security plan. I'm fully responsible for the specific matters. Over. The sofa corner immediately sank into an absurd silence. Luo Nan was stunned. He only spoke after a while. That's it? What about the specific actions? Staffing? Are there any guarantees? This sort of thing. Papercut saw that the situation was far from good. He instinctively acted as a peacemaker. The others looked at each other in dismay, finding it harder and harder to open their mouths. Oh, it's only been a while, but it's getting lively. A sudden external force shattered the wall of silence in the sofa corner. A rather eye-catching group of people entered this dusky corner along with the sound. He Donglu wore a well-ironed military uniform, yet he was hugging two beauties on his left and right. He brought along two beautiful women who were just flower vases as he walked over. Behind him followed an old driver who had maintained his silence all this time. He should be a bodyguard or something. As for the other martial artist, Feng Zhejun, and his female companion, they were nowhere to be seen. He Donglu played around the venue for a bit. He quite liked the atmosphere in the sofa corner. It was just right for him to play a few games with the flower vases. But when he came back, he couldn't help but be stunned when he saw the dense mass of people. This place could indeed fit a few more people, but it seemed like it was no longer suitable to play games. TSK. What a disappointment. In order to create an atmosphere, there were practically no lighting facilities in the sofa corner. The watery blue light pouring over from the crystal pillar in the center was the brightest source of light. The first person He Donglu recognized was Shui Lei, who was behind the sofa. That size very appropriately stimulated his memories. He remembered that this big guy had nearly gotten into a conflict with his follower just now. He recognized Shui Lei, and his gaze shot down. He also saw Xie Junping and Hu Huaying along the way. They all knew each other. He Donglu grinned and used his chin to point in the distance. You guys also know the benefits of this place? Come. Make some space. This party is really boring. It's just that the quality of the girls is okay. His words caused the two flower vases to pout coquettishly and laugh. On the side of the ring-shaped sofa, Xie Junping and Hu Huaying glanced at each other and stood up at the same time. Xie Junping called out, "Young Master He, we just so happened to meet. This place is too crowded. Let's go somewhere else. It's here." What's a little crowded? At this time, we should squeeze a little. How could He Donglu be easily persuaded by others? Moreover, at this time, he saw Tianxi sitting upright with her eyes drooped at the entrance of the ring-shaped hair ring. Her dignified and elegant bearing was precisely the kind he admired the most. It just so happened that this side was relatively empty. He Donglu didn't care about the capacity of the ring-shaped sofa that was almost full. He hugged the two flower vases and walked inside. Naturally, he walked to Tianxi's side. He Donglu could be carefree, but the old driver behind him had to fulfill his duty. As he spoke, the latter had already keenly sensed that something was wrong. Sweeping his gaze, he also saw a familiar person first. Zhou. The old driver opened his mouth, wanting to speak. At this time, a cold and clear gaze shot over from the other side. The instant he made contact with the gaze, he immediately stood at attention and shut his mouth. Although He Donglu wasn't considered a proper hoodlum, he already had thoughts of hunting. As he passed through the inner aisle of the sofa, he deliberately rubbed against Tianxi's legs, which were wrapped in her long skirt. He revealed a smiling face and said, "Excuse me, beautiful." Tianxi knew from Xie Junping and Hu Huaying's reactions that this young master he had an extraordinary status. She faintly furrowed her brows, but she didn't raise her head. She just shrunk back a bit. He Donglu chuckled as he sat down. He was just about to strike up a conversation when he heard a low chuckle from the side. The sound was extremely pleasant, like the cry of a lark on a branch. It made one's heart itch to hear it. He Donglu followed the sound and raised his head. He saw a youthful and bright young woman. She laughed in an unbridled and willful manner, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. She didn't conceal them at all, practically lighting up the dusky corner. Oh my, this is good. He Donglu was at the age where he loved to play. He liked this kind of magnanimous playmaster the most. He immediately changed his target. His gaze swept over the other person's body, and he called out with a laugh, "Beautiful lady, you're dressed as..." A female student being kept as a mistress. Zhang Yingying had been stifled by the previous round of silence. It was hard for her to speak even if she wanted to. Naturally, she was incomparably cooperative when she saw that there was something fun to be had. She beamed as she hugged Luo Nan's arm and shook it. "This is our boss." Chapter 323. Beauty. Please don't enter the entertainment circle. Your acting skills are too exaggerated, okay? He Donglu blinked his eyes a few times before adjusting himself. He took advantage of the situation to turn his line of sight. He wanted to see who the boss was. Luo Nan was pondering over a difficult problem, but He Donglu and Zhang Yingying had joined forces to cause a ruckus. His train of thought was completely severed. He frowned and raised his head. Under the illumination of the deep blue light, he just happened to meet He Donglu face to face. "Oh, haven't we met before?" He Donglu had a bit of an impression, but Luo Nan had taken off his white coat and was even wearing his glasses. There were too many distracting factors, so he didn't recognize Luo Nan for a time. Xie Junping smiled as he introduced, "Oh, it's Nanster. We just met here." He Donglu had seen many people tonight, so how could he remember so much? However, he shot a glance at the large man standing behind Xie Junping, and a light bulb went off in his head. He remembered this group. The one that left the deepest impression was actually Shui Lei, the martial artist. He had nearly gotten into a conflict with his other follower. As for Luo Nan, who was playing the role of a psychologist, He Donglu could only barely say that he had some impression of him. "Oh, I've seen him before. What's up? You changed your role. Do you think that being a boss is more promising?" Luo Nan glanced at him, but he didn't respond. He Donglu didn't mind. He didn't give Luo Nan any space to speak, so he directly gave his evaluation. "This move is quite creative. Most importantly, it's interesting. It's just that you're wearing it. It's a bit lacking in professionalism. Especially the glasses. What a failure. Bro, your face is tender to begin with. Now that you're wearing this featureless prop, you look like a student even through the crystal pillar." Zhang Yingying followed up, "You're a big boss. There's nothing wrong with being a bit casual. It's good to be surrounded by followers. You see, secretaries, lovers, followers, bodyguards, a whole bunch of them." She drew a circle with her slender fingers. Behind her, Shui Lei was tall and strong, and looked like a bodyguard. He also had a corresponding sense of duty. However, most of the followers sitting on the sofa could only roll their eyes. Of course He Donglu knew that this was a joke. He laughed out loud and habitually raised his arms, resting them on the shoulders of the two pretty faces. After all, there were too many people here. When he stretched, it was a little tight. His originally well-ironed military uniform was lifted halfway by his movements. Right Vase very considerately reached out and tried to smooth it. Later, she felt that it was not easy to do so she simply helped him unbutton his shirt and revealed the shirt underneath. Amidst the laughter, she pretended to lose her balance and rolled directly into his arms. She even pretended to struggle, but in fact, she was rubbing against him and teasing him. On the other side, Vase left, pouted. She had been outshone by her comrade and competitor. He Donglu did not bat an eyelid. From what he saw, the right pretty face's method of courting favor was a bit low. It was mixed with feelings of jealousy towards that female student. His thoughts were impure. Originally, a friend with benefits for a short period of time wouldn't be able to ask for too much. However, there was a first-class prey in front of him. If he continued to accept this, wouldn't it make him seem too low-class? Therefore, He Donglu paid no attention to the plump and tender flesh rolling around his waist. His gaze swiveled, skipping over all the men. He only looked at the women. Soon, he discovered that Luo Nan's secretary on the other side seemed to be pretty good. The lighting in the corner of the sofa was dim, and the left pretty face was separated by the angle. He Donglu wasn't able to see clearly for a time. He only knew that the woman was dressed in a white collar outfit. She sat on the sofa, and her thin suit pants faintly outlined the lines of her legs. Her legs were slender and powerful, and the feeling was quite right. There was also the quiet lover at the edge of the sofa. He could see her even more clearly now that she was unobstructed. Don't look at her submissive appearance, she had a different flavor. Oh, she looked a bit familiar. TSK. Secretary, lover, and kept woman. They were all first-class characters. He Donglu could not help but feel jealous. He had always been a bit emotional. He suddenly didn't want to pay attention to Luo Nan. Instead, he took advantage of the gap made by the right pretty face to chat and laugh with the lover at the edge of the sofa. Beauty, I think we've met before. Tianxi gave him a glance and nodded slightly. She didn't say anything. This was a rather polite refusal. However, how could he Donglu be sent away so easily? Since he had spoken, he had a follow-up move. He pressed down on the right pretty face with one hand, not letting the stupid woman get up and block his line of sight. He continued to strike up a conversation. Let me think. Right. You came with Tang Yi, right? Aha. You left a deep impression. Tianxi was startled, and her expression changed slightly. He Donglu had already achieved his goal. He even moved his body closer to Tianxi. He deliberately lowered his voice. You just happened to separate from Tang Yi when I saw you just now. What a pity. I didn't even get to know you. May I ask for your name? His extremely oppressive movements forced Tianxi to shrink back a bit. But then, this beautiful woman's reaction made He Donglu depressed. Tianxi's gaze went over his shoulder and cast toward Luo Nan. Clearly, her instincts still cared more about Luo Nan's opinion. Was this really just role-playing and nothing more? Oh, and also, isn't this ring-shaped sofa a bit too quiet? Just as this thought arose, Luo Nan began another conversation. Is there any way to get a large loan? Zhang Yingying responded, how much do you want to borrow? 60 million. Wow! Look at how determined you are to get it. It's true that I'm determined to get it. Luo Nan's elbows were still resting on his knees. His hands were clasped together, blocking his mouth for a bit of support. His head faced the crystal pillar in the center, staring at the mutant devil ray that was still spiraling and swimming inside. He Donglu. Why did it feel like he was transparent air? Not a single word in the short conversation was related to him. Even though he had brought 2 flower vases and forcefully entered, even though he had brought out the topic of role-playing, and he had even taken liberties with his lover, the sofa corner circle had not given a serious response. They had even ignored him. Please. No matter when or where he, young master he, went, he was always the center of attention. He was the center of the stage. When had he ever encountered this sort of treatment? Was it on purpose? He Donglu's gaze turned cold. He looked at the more familiar Xie Junping and Hu Huaying, but he discovered that the body language of these two seemed to be quite awkward. It was quite different from the cold and quiet feelings of the other people. Something's wrong. He had always felt that Luo Nan was a friend or follower of Xie Junping and Hu Huaying. Naturally, the group of people in the sofa corner were of the same type. It was only natural that they should be a gathering of rich second generations. But now it seemed that this way of thinking was unreliable. He was familiar with the younger generation of the military and government figures of Xia City. He was a bit unfamiliar with the business world, but he still had some concept of it. Yao Feng had also introduced Xie Junping and Hu Huaying to him before. Behind them was an extremely representative regional financial group of Xia City. They had been operating for several decades, and their industries covered every corner of the city. They were absolutely not something that could be summarized in the medical group, ranches, and the like. Xie Junping and Hu Huaying, especially Xie Junping, should be core figures in any circle of rich second generations in the business world. But their current seating, their tone, and their demeanor were all eccentric and out of sync. There was also the youthful and bright female student. She said things like boss, follower, lover, bodyguard, and so on. Though she was mostly teasing and joking, the group of people sitting on the sofa actually didn't jeer or retort, regardless of whether they were happy or not. There was a faint sense of closeness within them. It could even be said that they had a superior and subordinate relationship. This was a model that the loose circle of rich second generations could never achieve. He Donglu was a big silk pants, yes, but he had been in a military and government family for a long time. His brain had never been lacking. Once he discovered a problem, his gaze swept over everyone's faces once more. This time, the objects of his observation weren't limited to beautiful women. He finally discovered that aside from the ones he paid attention to, the remaining few were all relatively old. They didn't have the slightest bit of scholarly air. They shouldn't belong in the category of participating in the party. He observed others, and others also looked at him. The emotions in their gazes were subtle. What's the meaning of this oldest guy staring at me like that? He looks quite familiar. Old show? Fuck. He Donglo's scalp suddenly tingled. His gaze drifted, and he instinctively avoided the gaze that was brimming with deep meaning. Then, his drifting gaze finally caught a glimpse of his own bodyguard, the old driver. He didn't even take a seat. His gaze was looking straight ahead, and he stood ramrod straight. He was perhaps even more serious than he was back in the army. At this time, Xiaofan made a phone call. Xie Junping contacted him, and the other side immediately asked, "Have you seen young Master He?" They just happened to be together. It's Yao Seer. Xie Junping made a slight gesture towards He Donglu. Seeing that the latter didn't respond at all, he reported the location. He's at the corner of the sofa in the bar. Don't! He Donglu suddenly spoke. He suddenly stood up, giving Xie Junping a fright. He only saw He Donglu chuckle and reply, "There's no need for him to come. I just happen to have some business with him. See you guys later." Xie Junping looked over, stunned. Hu Huaying's expression was more or less the same. As for the two flower vases at He Donglo's side, they were even more dizzy. They stood up at a loss of what to do, completely unaware of what was going on. It was good to stand up, especially the flower vase on the left. Her posture was perfect. She helped him block the other side's line of sight. He Donglu only considered himself to be a role model of the new era, deceiving one's ears while stealing a bell. He didn't say anything else and headed outside the ring-shaped sofa. Tianxi subconsciously moved to the side to make way, but at this time, a swift and fierce tall and sturdy figure arrived. He raised his voice and laughed. "Oh my, so many people! Are there any seats left?" Cragburst had arrived. Before his laughter faded, He Yuan coldly said, "Stand." Ha! Cragburst stared blankly for a moment. He then saw a certain young man in a military uniform in the aisle of the ring-shaped sofa. His clothes were untidy, and he was about to take a step and jump out. He immediately came to a realization. He had always been a man of action. His large hand, the size of a cattail leaf fan, stretched out and pressed down on the young man's head, directly pushing him back. Cragburst's thick and long fingers pinched He Donglo's head like a ball. His palm blocked He Donglo's mouth and nose, stifling He Donglu to the point where his eyes rolled back. Since birth, when had he ever been treated like this? Even if it was only for an instant, it was enough for him to remember it for a lifetime. Especially Xie Junping and Hu Huaying's stupefied appearance. It fully displayed the effects of this absurd play. He had finally been placed in the center of the stage, but he was playing the role of a freaking clown. An utterly terrible mood rushed to his head. He Donglu's face flushed red. Cragburst's palm had just moved away when He Donglu stomped his feet and shouted, "He Wayne, is this how you treat your little brother?" The sofa corner suddenly turned silent. Truly, many people needed to adjust the way they stabilized their facial muscles. But soon, Zhang Yingying used a loud whistle and laughter to announce the failure of the adjustment. "Wow, Secretary He, you two siblings really complement each other." Cough, cough, cough. Papercut also broke down. He laughed and coughed. He even had to raise his hand to express his apology to He Yuan. He Yuan didn't care. He Donglu didn't care about hunting targets and the like. He glared angrily at Zhang Yingying and the crowd of onlookers who were watching the show. Countless vicious thoughts flipped through his mind. But soon, He Yuan issued a new order. "Take it off." These words came out of nowhere, but He Donglu understood in an instant. His face flushed even redder. He shouted, "Sis, leave me some face. This isn't a real military uniform. It's cosplay. A prop." He Yuan didn't say anything. She merely raised her head from the thick shadows and cast her clear and cold gaze. The left pretty face had long since been stupefied by this scene. Her legs went soft, and she fell back onto the sofa. There was no longer any barrier between the siblings. Everything was clear and distinct. He Donglu was afraid of this, not to mention that he was from a military family. His methods were indeed taboo. In the end, he could only grit his teeth and take off his military uniform. He conveniently stuffed it into the right pretty face's bosom. He waved his hand irritably, like he was shooing away chickens and ducks. He told the two pretty faces to scram. "All of you go! All of you go! Hurry up!" The two pretty faces left with stupefied expressions. He Donglu only wore a white shirt on his upper body. Even though the temperature in the building was adjusted quite well, he still shivered under the psychological effects. He spread his hands toward He Yueyin in extreme helplessness. "This should be fine, right?" He Yueyin ignored him. She tilted her head slightly and asked Luo Nan in a soft voice, "Mr. Luo, are we going to the hospital now?" Luo Nan knew that this place was no longer suitable. He nodded and stood up. Everyone moved with him the moment he moved. The members of the society stood up in unison. People like Xie Junping and Tian Si, who had no concept of what was going on, stood up subconsciously. The group of people walked out in a dense mass. Hey, what the hell are you guys doing?" He Donglu suddenly became an invisible person. His urgent greetings were ignored. He was truly indignant. He couldn't help but reach out to grab his sister, but he didn't have the strength to do so. How could he grab her? He forced himself to keep up, but He Yuein's cold and clear gaze streaked across him. He immediately raised his hand and stood motionless in his original spot. He stared blankly as the group of people left into the distance. "Hey, young master you're..." Yao Feng rushed over from behind. He saw He Donglu wearing a white shirt. He raised his hand as if he had just been robbed. The dense mass of people in front of him had already merged into the stream of people. He couldn't see them clearly. Yao Feng just felt that this was inexplicable. He called out, "Young master you can see me?" "Ha! He Donglu no longer paid attention to Yao Feng. He just lowered his hand and sat back down on the sofa. Since He Yueyin was here, he had already more or less guessed the group's background. Everyone in the family knew where He Yuein's focus of work was during this period of time. A group of arrogant soldiers and valiant generals. Criminals outside the law. He Donglu was still gnashing his teeth a bit, but he was confused in the blink of an eye. "Secretary? What the hell?" He Donglu tried to recall Luo Nan's face, but he was affected by his glasses and the dim lighting. He was unable to remember Luo Nan's face clearly. His mind spun a few times, and his impression became even more blurry. He leaned back, nearly giving up. But an exceptionally clear picture inexplicably flipped over in his mind. In the dusky region, the ripples of light were faintly discernible. Luo Nan and He Yueyin sat side by side. One was stooped, the other upright. And wasn't the distance a bit too close? Chapter 324. October 28, 2096. 4:55 in the morning. Luo Nan's consciousness floated up from the chaos. It was neither close nor distant. He hadn't opened his eyes yet, but the Hexa-ear had already projected a portion of useful information into his mind. It represented the beginning of a new day. Sunday's class schedule was updated and adjusted. Outings were arranged. Gear's repair progress was made. Grandfather's condition was briefed. The latest battle situation regarding the logic world was on the internal forum. The series of information that had already been sorted out lit up on the Hexa-ear's interface. Luo Nan's mind swept over, and he received the information one by one. But he didn't read it in detail. He just stretched lazily on the bed and adjusted his posture a bit. He laid perfectly straight and relaxed his body. Right now he was lying on the bed with his hands crossed behind his head. As his body turned, the back of his head rubbed against his palms, making rustling noises. The warmth of his palms passed through a thin layer of hair and rotated on his scalp. But no matter what, it was unable to seep down. Instead, there was a slight coolness that seeped out from the inner layer of his scalp. This feeling was very wonderful. The interior of his brain cavity was empty. It was as if his brain tissue had melted away, leaving behind only the eye's orifice that was gradually becoming complete. The external neuron that revolved and twisted. It was neither close nor distant. It seemed to be separated by an invisible curtain. It was no longer like 2 days ago when sparks of electricity were crackling everywhere. But upon careful contemplation, there was a wisp of cold air passing through. In a trance, that area seemed to have sunk in. It was impossible to see the bottom. It led directly to another indescribable dimension. Right now, a cold wind blew from within, filling his entire skull with a chill. It was as if his forehead had caved in with a hole. Luo Nan grimaced with his eyes closed. His consciousness was a bit erratic. That cold and gloomy stream of air was like a long thread, pulling in enormous waves of grayish-white clouds. It churned and rushed into the depths of his brain. It opened up his mind, which was originally restrained in one place, to accommodate the unfathomable vast world of reality and illusion. He slowly opened his eyes. The room was dark. Only the residual light of the street lamps in the neighborhood passed through the window screen, giving the room a bit of brightness. It faintly outlined the outlines of various furnishings. Luo Nan's current level of cultivation in the eye's orifice gave him the ability to see in the night. His gaze could see the fine details, but his line of sight was unfocused. He didn't pay attention to the structure of the ceiling. He was in a daze for a while. Then his gaze finally focused. He exerted strength in his waist and abdomen, and sat up. This was her uncle's house, his bedroom. The space wasn't very spacious, but the bed was. Luo Nan put up with it, assuming a posture that tested his flexibility on the bed. It was like yoga, but it wasn't yoga. It wasn't guidance, but it was loosening and loosening his muscles and bones, training his body. His entire body was like a deformed meatball. He tossed and turned from one end of the bed to the other. There were only 2 things that did not change during the process. One was the state of breathing in and out, where the breath was continuous, and the other was the electric fire generated by the coupling between the eye's orifice and the external neuron. It crackled and flickered, shining in the brain, then down to the lungs, and even the tips of the hands and feet. The vibration opened up all the pores in the body, and sometimes there was severe pain, but the perception became more and more acute. This morning exercise class lasted for 40 minutes. Although it was all bed exercises, most of the exercises involved touching the bones, flesh and tendons. It was quite comprehensive. Not to mention, there was also the coupling force of the 2 sets of gears within the framework of order that affected the entire body. It was both a tempering and a torture. The feeling was definitely not one of enjoyment. By the time Luo Nan got off the bed, his body was already damp. The bedding and the like were naturally cleaned up by the housekeeping robots. Luo Nan only went to the bathroom to take a shower. He looked into the mirror, which was mostly obscured by steam. He saw his body, which was still thin, and his eyes, which were densely covered in cracks. The cracks in his pupils seemed to have shrunk a bit compared to 2 days ago. He still looked quite horrifying, and there were occasional flows of electricity. There was nothing to say. He had to cover it up. Luo Nan picked up the mirror case by his hand and put the contact lenses in his eyes. He couldn't use the other functions of this toy, but the effects of the contact lenses were first class. Luo Nan waited until everything was ready. He was dressed neatly, and he recovered his appearance as a young student. He went downstairs and went out to begin his routine morning run. He had just run out of the house when the sound of whistling entered his ears. It was transmitted through the hexa ear, followed by a temporary tactical position. Luo Nan went through the information in his mind. He quickly turned his head and saw a tall figure 50 meters away in the darkness of the night. The figure was reaching out with his fingers, aiming at Luo Nan's head. Bang! You're still a bit slow. Cragburst grinned, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. Are you sure you want to compete in sniping? Luo Nan laughed as well. He communicated with Cragburst through the hexa ear and ran over to meet up. Cragburst was dressed like a morning jogger. The 2 jogged side by side. Aside from the large difference in height, they were no different from other people who were training together. Cragburst's appearance outside Luo Nan's residence was naturally not a coincidence. According to the schedule, it was time for Cragburst to teach crash course in universal commands. And everyone understood that this was one of the protective measures for Luo Nan. The purpose of teaching was to ensure that there was always an ability user by his side. When an unexpected event occurred, the ability user could protect him, cooperate with him in battle and so on. Perhaps Yuan already had such thoughts and arrangements when she created the training program. The actions of those people from headquarters only pushed this arrangement from hidden to obvious. Luo Nan was non-committal toward this arrangement. Compared to himself, he was more concerned about the safety of his grandfather, his uncle and his aunt. The society had made arrangements for this, but the results had yet to be tested. Luo Nan wished that he would never test this for the rest of his life. I saw a post this morning. The big debate is getting more and more explosive. Most people are just messing around, but some people are quite interesting. Don't you have an anonymous post? Cragburst and Luo Nan were friends who had fought side by side. They were quite familiar with each other. They were quite different from the other teachers. Before the lecture, he chatted idly with Luo Nan about the heated debate in the logic world over the past 2 days. Luo Nan thought of the information he received in the morning and shrugged. Isn't it all a strategy? I think the results are quite good. Half a month had passed since that night at Frost River Reality. The discussion regarding President Ouyang Chen's logic world on the society's internal forums had truly become popular. It looked slow, but it could be seen that the lover's heart was clear. It was all hype. The general logic was like this. Hey, have you heard of President Ouyang's logic world? A spatial fault that forms a world of its own. That's awesome. It really is awesome. But this toy is too high and mighty. I can't understand it. Haven't you seen the forums? A bunch of people are interpreting it. They're all so clear and logical. It's like they're all extraordinaries. But Old You replied. Old You? Yeah. It seems that he agrees with the OP's words. But that OP only heard about it from someone else. It's just a casual remark. It's a bit roundabout. Her Majesty Empress Wu doesn't quite agree. Oh my. This person replied too? A fleeting moment. Those two haven't opened their mouths yet, but the people below are making a ruckus. They haven't stopped yet. They're all clamoring for President Ouyang to personally explain. Tisk. TSK. TSK. Let's go take a look. Just like this, it was like a crosstalk. It was too fake, but it couldn't withstand the effects of Old Yu and Her Majesty Empress Wu's authority. There was also the anticipation of Ouyang Chen personally teaching and explaining. In a short dozen hours, related posts flooded the screen. They were full of words like, support Old Yu, long live Empress Wu, pay respects to Old Yu, Her Majesty Empress Wu is the best, and so on. Of course, a bunch of bored people wouldn't let go of Ouyang Chen, the instigator. They posted messages like they were celebrating. President Ouyang has come out to receive guests. He's already outside the laboratory. Who has the guts to knock on the door? Seeing is believing. Hearing is false. Bragging will get you struck. I strongly request to set off fireworks again. No, I mean the logic world. 70 to 80% of the people who left such messages were from the Xia City branch. After Her Majesty Empress Wu had successfully entered the ranks of extraordinaries, Xia City's Iron Triangle had become even more illustrious. All the branch members were honored. So, instead of calling it a debate, it was better to call it a show of closeness. It actually increased the Xia City branch's cohesive force. In the eyes of some people, the posts had a different meaning. It seemed that the Xia City branch no longer wanted to hide the truth of the Frost River reality incident. Did they want to announce it to the world? Otherwise, why would they mention the logic world? So soon, the other cities that had set up the psychic wave network joined in. Most of the people who followed were high-end people. They wouldn't worship the Iron Triangle, and they were disinclined to leave a message in the post that had gone off topic early on. But they would swipe a few times from time to time. They wanted to see if Ouyang Chen would say something later on. They wanted to see if he would reveal any useful information. And this was the effect of the hype. The attention of those people would be pulled to the side of the Iron Triangle. They wouldn't talk about Luo Nan all the time. These were the 3 big shots of the Xia City branch. They were diverting the pressure from Luo Nan. It could be considered a patch for the sudden incident from 2 days ago. Luo Nan calmly accepted this because this was what he deserved. But then again, whether this diverting method would be effective was still uncertain. It was impossible for Luo Nan to place all his hopes on this. He just paid a bit of attention, that's all. Moreover, there were tens of thousands of stories. There were many long-winded discussions, confusing people, and stirring up the atmosphere. They were all mixed together. Luonan felt dizzy just looking at them. It was better to keep a respectful distance. However, Luonan was also curious about Cragburst's attitude. Don't you hate this kind of pure mouth cannon the most? Can you keep looking? Why can't I keep looking? It's very pleasing to the eye. Cragburst gave a thumbs up. Her Majesty Empress Wu is really cool this time. She took all kinds of private photos. She's so beautiful. And then there's that group of girls from her firm. They're lining up to take photos together. This is a once-in-a-decade opportunity. Hurry up and save them. Remember not to save them on the Psychic Wave Network. Otherwise, if Her Majesty is in a bad mood, all the collections will be finished. Fine. Luonan now understood why the popularity of the post had exploded. But then again, Her Majesty Empress Wu was a legendary woman. Luonan had long heard of her name, but he never had the chance to meet her. He was very curious as to what kind of person she was. She was able to tame Zhang Yingying, who had a temperament like hers. Luonan's thought was born, and he wanted to observe. He never expected that Cragburst would scream as soon as he opened the page from the Hexa ear. Fuck! My cloud drive. Chapter 325. Luonan was running in front, breathing smoothly. Cragburst was tearing apart a certain scoundrel who had taught him how to transfer. The two were connected through the Hexa ear, but Cragburst howled in his excitement. You said transferring is the only way to be safe. What's going on now? Virus? Is the Martial Empress so bored that she planted a virus in her balls? Oh right, she doesn't have any balls. The latter half of his voice was very low, but it soon rose up again. You don't know? I listened to your fucking introduction and used your transcoder to transfer the files. Ha! Of course it's yours. Why would I use it for anything else? F***CK. You're wailing. Cragburst grinned as he spoke, reversing his mood. Oh my! I heard about your super high-end, super high-capacity archive. It turned to ashes just like that? That's quite a pity. Cragburst ended the communication with a big laugh. He felt that he finally had someone to take with him. Even though the person was a bit thinner. He impatiently explained to Luonan. It's that bastard bamboo pole. He's really hurt himself this time. He reaped what he sowed. Luonan didn't have that kind of agitated experience. He wasn't a veteran like Cragburst or Bamboo Pole. He just followed along and asked, Isn't it troublesome to transfer from the Psychic Wave Network to the Internet? I heard so. But it's fine as long as we know how to use the tools. Bamboo Pole wrote a few small programs that are quite easy to use. Of course, he's screwed this time. Is it a simple information transfer? Or is it an interference and coupling between the mental and material planes? Don't. Let's not talk about this. You can just ask Bamboo Pole later. Cragburst immediately called for a stop. He wasn't interested in pure theory at all, especially with Luonan's fierce reputation. If Luonan really got up early in the morning, it was as if he had drunk 3 liters of alcohol. His day would be wasted. Cragburst admitted defeat, but Luonan was a bit regretful. Right now, he was very interested in all phenomena and theories that could involve format conversion, interference coupling, and so on. His breakthrough 2 days ago had opened a door to him. The door was full of treasures, but there were far too many treasures. He hadn't completely sorted them out yet. He needed to continue working hard. Luonan's morning running exercise had just begun. He thought for a bit and changed the topic. I still haven't thanked you. Cragburst waved his hand. How could that be? This sort of mission is easy and convenient, and you get points too. Only your secretary would be so considerate in arranging it. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the analysis of winning and losing factors and the mentality of facing the enemy. What you told me was really useful and helped me a lot. Let's talk about some experience. If we can use it, it means that we have a tacit understanding. Cragburst rubbed his big bald head. He was quite proud of himself. He gave Luonan another thumbs up. You were able to find a concept that suits you so quickly. You're quite amazing. Oh right, I heard from Zhang Yingying that it's called coupling? To be precise, it's formatting theory. Coupling is a type of application. It turns theory into reality. Luo Nan knew that Cragburst didn't want to listen to theory, so he didn't say too much. According to Cragburst's suggestion, one must have an unshakable conviction when facing a powerful enemy. That conviction must be established upon one's most irreplaceable advantage. Luo Nan didn't hesitate too much. He chose formatting theory. Only a complete set of laws and rules established upon the foundation of formatting theory could be an irreplaceable element fused into his bloodline. It was formatting theory that brought him inconceivable experiences. It presented the marvels of the dark side of the world to him. It allowed him to know what others didn't know. It allowed him to see what others didn't see. It also gave him the authority of certain laws and rules. And what was even more fortunate was that he was able to comprehend his mother's coupling theory in time. He borrowed the heart lantern of the eye's orifice that Xiaofan had taught him to put the capital of formatting theory into practice. He could completely use a lofty tone to speak to an ability user like Black Beetle like that. You can't see what I can see. You don't know what I know. You can't compare to what I can control. You can't reach where I'm at. Frankly speaking, this feeling wasn't bad. Luo Nan grinned and laughed. The temperature flowing through his veins seemed to increase somewhat. On the other side, Cragburst pondered for a bit. He grunted twice and then opened his mouth to speak. It's obviously good to be able to find a conviction. However, it's not enough to just look at victory. You have to look at defeat. There's no one in this world who can win forever and never lose. It's said that President Ouyang was beaten to the point of questioning life when he was young. When that time comes, it will be time for you to be tested. Luo Nan turned his head to glance at him and nodded. I'm prepared. A bit of mental preparation is absolutely not enough. Cragburst gave a piece of advice as someone with experience. It's hard for even the calmest person to thoroughly discover their own flaws during victory. But after a crushing defeat, mistakes will be magnified. It's far too hard to maintain a normal state of mind. Therefore it needs to be tough. It needs to be quenched and polished over and over again. In the end, the existing structure needs to be completely smashed to pieces. Only then can a good piece of steel be refined. The most taboo thing is to sway left and right. It's self-denial. I know what you mean. Luo Nan continued to smile. The warm breath he exhaled from his mouth and nose was as smooth and long as before. But don't worry. I have no other choice. The blow of failure had arrived a long time ago. The current situation of the 3 generations of the Luo family was the clearest manifestation of this. But since his grandfather, mother, and perhaps even his father, all of his flesh and blood had poured their blood and sweat into formatting theory, Luo Nan was destined to be the driver and reviser of formatting theory before it crashed, even if it appeared to be a sports car that had gone out of control at high speeds. Therefore, Luo Nan didn't have the powerful conviction to use formatting theory to defeat all powerful enemies. He only had the resolve to live with it and die with it. Luckily, the road ahead was still marked by coupling and the existence of gear. There was still light. There was still hope. Luo Nan originally wanted to say something after his smile faded, but he didn't say anything in the end. His feet didn't stop. He raised his head to look ahead. The morning light gradually revealed itself behind the flower walls of the courtyard in the residential area. Even though there were layers upon layers of high-rise buildings, the clear outline of the sky was reflected. He could see everything clearly. Luo Nan jogged a few laps with Cragburst before returning home. Even though today was Sunday, everyone in the family had their own plans. They didn't wake up too late. Even Mo Pang yawned as he lay on the living room sofa, playing games to pass the time. He didn't see Luo Nan enter the house. His uncle, Mo Haiheng, was busy in the kitchen. He would insist on cooking whenever he had the time to prevent the entire family from suffering from the torment of the AI housekeeper or his aunt. As for his aunt, Mrs. Luo Shuqing, she just laid out the tableware and occasionally directed the AI housekeeper to tidy up the house. Luo Nan greeted her and went upstairs to wash up. Luo Shuqing just nodded. She didn't say much. It was hard to describe the cheerfulness between her brows. She glanced at Mo Pang playing games in the next moment and spoke in a cold voice. Come over and help. Mo Pang raised his head in shock, but he didn't dare to let out a fart when he saw his mother's face. He tossed away the handheld terminal and walked over to act like an obedient child. The atmosphere in the house was a bit oppressive. It was like this all the way until mealtime. It was no wonder that such a situation occurred. Yesterday was Saturday. The family went to the sanatorium to visit their grandfather, Luo Yuandao. But it was different from last time. They practically didn't have the chance to have direct contact with Luo Yuandao. According to the sanatorium, the degenerative symptoms of the old man's central nervous system were becoming more and more severe. It further deepened the condition of his schizophrenia, causing his mood to be very unstable. Moreover, it was still worsening. If this continued, his mind and body would probably quickly collapse. There would be no possibility of saving him. Even though this was a result that could be predicted long ago, it was still hard for people to accept when it actually happened. Luo Shuqing was the only relative who was allowed to visit for a short period of time yesterday. Her mood entered an extremely downcast state after she personally witnessed her father's various conditions. Her mood didn't improve by much after a night. Because of this, the dining table was strangely silent during breakfast time. Luonan buried his head in eating. Thin slices of beef were paired with millet porridge. A dozen or so slices of meat were directly pressed into the bowl of porridge. The porridge was thick and scalding, and it was wrapped in the fragrance of meat. It went very well with the rice. He used the largest bowl in the family. His progress was also the fastest. It didn't even take 10 minutes for him to finish his third bowl. Don't drink hot food. It's hot and you'll get sick. Luo Shuqing only ate a shallow layer of porridge in her bowl. She didn't have any appetite. She just watched the others eat. In the end, she stared at Luonan and opened her mouth to admonish him. Luonan just grunted and continued to bury his head. He slurped the golden millet porridge into his mouth, eating boldly and confidently. His appetite had always been astonishing. After following Gym Master Xiao to cultivate in the eye's orifice, his appetite had increased. Luonan wasn't indifferent to his grandfather's worsening condition. However, the experiences of the past few days, especially when he was swaying back and forth on the edge of life and death, caused a different feeling to linger in his heart. There were actually many attitudes one could have when facing the pain of one's loved ones. Sorrow was a common and helpless action in the secular world, but it might not be suitable for him. Luo Shuqing didn't get angry when she saw her nephew bury his head and eat. She just asked her husband, "Did Nan Nan gain some weight?" Mo Haihang could guess that his wife had sensed that something was wrong with her mood. She was trying to adjust herself, so he grunted and said, "Old Mo, give me a number. What's Luonan's weight?" Old Mo was the AI housekeeper. He grasped the body data and health index of the entire family. He immediately responded with a magnetic baritone voice. Mr. Luonan's weight was measured at 52.6 kilograms on October 28th. His BMI is 18.8. That's fine. Mo Haihang nodded at Luonan. You've put on a bit more weight recently. Your complexion looks better, though it's still on the light side. Luo Shuqing felt a bit gratified. Her lips curved into a smile. It looks like practicing martial arts was the right choice to stay in the hospital for a long time. I'll let the chubby kid go later. Mo Peng had been shot while eating. He immediately opened his eyes wide with an innocent expression. Luonan swallowed the piece of meat in his mouth and helped him out of this predicament. Gym Master Xiao is about to move. The dojo will be temporarily closed for business. Luo Shuqing furrowed her brows. Then what are you going to do? I don't go much. I just need to give some pointers occasionally. They only accepted me because of Leicester. This can't happen again. 2 days ago, Xie Junping wanted to join in on the fun, but he was rejected. Luonan didn't speak a single word of falsehood. At most, it was a bit exaggerated. Luo Shuqing stared at Mo Peng with a face full of disdain. You found a dozen excuses when I asked you to spar with me. Now you don't have a chance. Look at that belly of yours. The Mo family and the Luo family don't have anyone with a body like yours. Mo Peng was suddenly questioned about the purity of his bloodline. He was drunk. He couldn't help retorting, I'm still in my puberty period, okay? How am I supposed to grow taller if I'm skinny? Let's not talk about anything else. If I'm shorter than Mo Ya in the future, am I supposed to blame you guys for being biased? Mo Ya. Luo Shuqing suddenly laughed. You're talking about that unfilial girl who ran away from home? You don't need to worry. I'll break her legs when she gets back. Chapter 326. Madame Luo Shuqing unleashed her feudal aura when talking about Mo Ya. She was decisive and decisive. As the head of the family, Mo Haihang coughed. Don't go overboard. Luo Shuqing tilted her head and stared at her husband. Overboard? Her little brother has been hospitalized several times, and her grandfather's condition has worsened. She's been away from home for nearly a month, and she hasn't called once a week. Her entire mind is on that band. Who's the one overboard? Luo Nan and Mo Peng glanced at each other. They buried their heads in their food. Of course, they couldn't tell their aunt or mother that Mo Ya had rushed back to see Luo Nan the second time he was admitted to the hospital. She just hid it from a certain someone. Yes, Mo Haihang knew about it. He even covered for her. But right now, he still had a calm expression. It was quite admirable. Mo Peng saw that his father was acting beautifully, and his brain heated up. He blurted, "She'll be back in a week. You can teach her a lesson when the time comes." Who's wrong? Is there anyone who curses their sister like that? Luo Shuqing shot him a cold glance. She seemed to be shifting her anger. Mo Peng stepped on a landmine. He buried his head back down with a face of grief and indignation. Luo Nan had been burying his head in his food the entire time, but he was distracted by the topic of Mo Ya. Luo Shuqing was worried. He was worried as well. But they were worried in different directions. They were in troubled times. Even with the support of the Xia City branch, it was hard to take care of the entire family. Not to mention that Mo Ya was hundreds of kilometers away in a border town. In terms of worry, he was even more worried than his aunt. Nan, what are your plans for today? Luo Shuqing wanted to ease the atmosphere. She no longer clung to her son and turned to ask Luo Nan, bringing him back to reality. Luo Nan answered honestly, I need to go to the maintenance center in the West City. I accidentally broke one of Gym Master Xiao's things a few days ago at the Daoguan. I need to go get it fixed. Luo Shuqing was a bit surprised. West City? That's quite far. Should I take you there? No need. I've already booked a car. It'll be there after dinner. Luo Nan quickly finished eating. He tidied up a bit and ran out. The car he booked was Kragburst's military off-road vehicle. It was parked outside the residential area and had been waiting for a long time. Kragburst's original off-road vehicle had already been destroyed on the recycling stratum. This was a newly purchased one, and it looked even more domineering. Luo Nan sat in the front passenger seat and adjusted his posture. The car was a military-style car, so the seat was a bit hard. But it was truly spacious. With his height, he could practically stretch his legs in the seat. Tiske, how much is this car? About 2 million. Kragburst started up the car and ran over the road like a tank. Not long after, he cut into the high-speed magnetic track and continued to accelerate. Luo Nan used to be the least concerned about this sort of thing, but right now he was very envious. Tycoon! Are all ability users easy to earn money? Why can't I find a way? Kragburst laughed. You're still thinking about 60 million? Didn't the secretary say she would help you find one? I can't always trouble her. Luo Nan's two palms fiercely pressed against his temples. He propped up his elbows, half stretching, half venting. He had hardly ever worried about money before. After all, he was the only son of the Luo family. His parents had invested in his education and living funds when he was born. He had a fixed amount of credits to spend every month. Add the doting of his aunt and uncle, and Mo Ya's financial support, and he was barely able to support himself even when he was conducting pharmaceutical research. But if he wanted to purchase the mutant devil ray in the crystal pillar of Ocean Sky Cloud City, the large sum of 60 million far exceeded his level of living. If he was still that stuffy research student and followed the prescribed routine, it wouldn't be easy for him to earn this much money in his lifetime. And now, he heard that the Yao family couldn't stand the destruction the devil ray was causing to the ecosystem within the crystal pillar. They were constantly contacting the next family. Perhaps the price would drop if he dragged it out for a bit longer, but it wouldn't mean much to Luo Nan. The most important thing was that he didn't have enough time. Oh my, I get annoyed just thinking about money. Luo Nan sighed. He only had this sort of opportunity to vent his frustrations in front of someone he was familiar with like Kragburst. Kragburst curled his lips. Your appetite is too big. Money doesn't just fall from the sky. If you really can't do it, I'll sponsor you a few million later. I'll make up for the difference or something. We're in a society of credit. Who would have so much spare money? Luo Nen leaned against the back of his seat. He cupped his hands weakly. Thanks. But I'd rather you introduce me to a way to make money. I have no clue at all. Where did you find it before? Ren Bufa of the society. I've looked for both official and private matters. It's all points and resources. I've never seen cash. There are points to exchange, but the market price of one honor point is 1 million. It's like trying to put out a cart of firewood with a cup of water. Zhang Yingying, Papercut, and the others all urged me not to trade. Of course you can't trade. Cragburst slapped the steering wheel. The society's pricing hasn't changed in 30 years. You know, it's purely used to scam people. If you want to trade, you should go to the black market. Puh. Don't go to the black market either. There are countless scammers there. Many of them are set up by the bastards of headquarters to specifically sweep points. Luo Nan grunted. They said the same thing. Honor points are very important. Right now the Society's Circle has formed a very closed-off rare and precious resource trading platform. It's either barter or use honor points as money. Nothing else matters. Cragburst was still worried that Luo Nen didn't know the depth of things and that he would run headfirst into it and be countered by others. Cragburst put in more effort to explain. In my opinion, this is the biggest reason why the society is able to last until today. Look at how the society has caused the heavens to be angry and the people to be resentful. Especially headquarters. But the majority of people are still here. There are still large groups of people who are sharpening their brains to get in. Why? Isn't it because of this resource trading platform? It's whetting everyone's appetite? You can't see it right now, but when you go deeper into cultivation, you'll need maintenance, treatment, and advancement. Large amounts of points will be casually thrown out. One mistake and your progress will stagnate for several years. Luo Nen nodded, then shook his head. He laughed bitterly. Right now I just want to make money. Make a lot of money. Cragburst grinned. So you're looking in the wrong direction. The society's trading platform has already formed a closed-off circle. The money of the secular society isn't worth a fart. If you really want to make money, and you want to rely on your extraordinary abilities to make money, then you need to find those circles that are neither close nor distant from us. Neither close nor distant? In other words, those who know of the existence of the inner world but don't possess the relevant abilities themselves. They hope to hire ability users to do a few special things. Individuals, financial groups, military and political powers, and so on. Cragburst turned his head to look at Luo Nan's face a few times when he spoke up to this point. He had a rare hesitation. This circle is half black and half white. Perhaps it's too early for you to make contact with it. What's too early? It's too late to make money right now. Oh, hold on. Using ability users. You mean to do some illegal things? Luo Nan came to a realization. Cragburst shrugged. It's half and half. It depends on luck. Then. I'll go try my luck? Fine. In any case, with your current ability, it's just a matter of time before you make contact with these people. I'll take you on a trip later. This circle is mainly concentrated in a few private clubs. Most of the transactions are done face-to-face. Only after you get familiar with them can you take up work online and negotiate prices. Cragburst gave Luo Nan some relevant information, but he only spoke in general terms. Luo Nan could only understand the specific content after he made contact with them. Today was certainly not the day. Since the situation of the product you sent for repair is a bit special, the maintenance worker will personally explain the situation. She turned to the side and made some fine adjustments, allowing the holographic projection to be clearer. However, the maintenance worker displayed on the projection wasn't as pleasing to the eye as she was. The maintenance worker had already stopped his inspection work. He lifted his mask, revealing his thin cheeks. His appearance was unremarkable. But since he was able to work as a technician on an A-class workstation, he was undoubtedly an outstanding professional. He sat behind the workstation and nodded toward Luo Nan and Cragburst. He looked quite amiable. Chapter 327. Hello, Worker Zhai. Luo Nan greeted politely, but he soon blinked his eyes. He felt that this maintenance technician was a bit familiar. Furthermore, he noticed that Worker Zhai seemed to be sizing him up as well. Worker Zhai's gaze wasn't directed at his face. Instead, it lingered on the notebook between his elbows. Their eyes met again. Worker Zhai smiled and continued, "There are no relevant records of the product sent by the customer for repair. Preliminary confirmation is that it's ADIY product. Speaking of which, this student seems to like this kind of thing?" Luo Nan was startled. He looked at where Worker Zhai's gaze landed, and memories from the depths of his brain were flipped to the surface. He suddenly realized why Worker Zhai's face felt so familiar. He had indeed seen it before. Last month, he had a conflict with Li Shueqing and his gang, and his flexible e-ink screen was trampled. Taking advantage of the Precision Electronics Interest Club's club activity, he wanted to repair it. It was this Worker Zhai who had disassembled the flexible e-ink screen, allowing Luo Nan to discover the external neuron. He remembered that he had behaved rather rudely in a moment of desperation. Fortunately, this Worker Zhai had a good temper and did not hold it against him. Luo Nan revealed a smile as well. "Ah, Worker Zhai works here. Many thanks for the other day." "What are you thanking me for?" "All I did was dismantle and reassemble it once. Nothing else. By the way, is that board fixed?" Luo Nan didn't know how to answer the question. While he was stunned, Worker Zhai changed the topic. "What you brought today is also a DIY product. There's no ready-made manual to refer to, so it'll be more troublesome to repair. Currently, the number of visitors in the center hasn't reached the maximum, so I suggest you apply for a special service. It'll be much faster." DIY. In other words, it wasn't mass-produced. Luo Nan was a bit surprised, but he felt that this was reasonable. Apart from the dojos, he had never seen such a Tai Chi ball. He felt that its range of application was relatively narrow. Before he could respond, Crag Burst asked the maintenance consultant at his side, "This counts as an impromptu upgrade, right? What's the price?" The pretty maintenance consultant explained softly, "The two gentlemen have been booked by someone else on their behalf. All expenses for today will be borne by that customer. As for the exclusive service, it was mainly to move from the current open workbench to an independent studio to satisfy the need for privacy. It's still within the scope of the client's authority, so there's no need for additional expenses." "Is that so? Papercut is being so generous. Let's not be unreasonable. Let's just turn." Crag Burst simply overstepped his boundaries and helped Luo Nan make the decision. Luo Nan had no objections. "Then, let's enter the proprietary service mode." Workshop number 245. Please follow the maintenance consultant and wait. Worker Zhai, who was on the other side, performed a series of operations and waited for the reserve maintenance technician to arrive and take over his duties. Luo Nan and Crag Burst followed the pretty maintenance consultant. They passed through the open hall and arrived at a completely sealed workshop. The layout here wasn't too different from the outside. The only difference was that there were a few more facilities, but it was even more cramped. A big guy like Crag Burst felt a bit suffocated. Just as he was mumbling to himself, a transmission channel suddenly opened on the operating platform. The mechanical device that Luo Nan had sent for repair was fixed onto a special support. It was transported over and placed in front of the center of the operating platform. This mechanical device was the core of the Tai Chi Dojo's Tai Chi ball. It was spherical in shape and about the size of a fist. The outer layer was a very thin metal mesh, and the inside was a device similar to a gyroscope. At this time, on the special support, the outer metal net was constantly expanding and shrinking, but that was all. Crag Burst clicked his tongue twice. "Isn't it troublesome to send it back and forth?" As he spoke, he pulled Luo Nan forward to observe the device. The maintenance consultant had told them before that an independent workshop was different from the outside. Customers could directly enter the operating platform and observe from a close distance. They could even operate the device with the permission of the maintenance technician. Some DIY enthusiasts wanted this sort of atmosphere. They flocked like ducks to this place. Luo Nan was mechanically illiterate. He had no concept of operating anything, but Crag Burst had served in the Coastal Defense Force for many years. He could be considered half an expert. However, he never paid attention to what Luo Nan had sent for repair. Now that he saw it up close, he said, "This toy looks quite familiar. It looks like a hovering target?" The prototype should be the Paya Corporation's Comet Model 3 hovering target. It's a very old model. It was introduced to the market 10 years ago. Worker Zhai entered from another employee passageway and continued Cragburst's conversation. Cragburst snapped his fingers. "Yes, it's the Comet Model 3. The gyroscope in the middle is actually an AI hub. It's special and it's very durable. When I was in the military, I could use it for a long time with a random target shell. It's easy to repair. The Comet Model 3 isn't hard to repair, but this product is a bit different." Worker Zhai walked to the side of the two. He wasn't tall. He was about the same height as Luo Nan. He had a friendly smile. But when he stood in front of the operating platform and activated the relevant privileges, all sorts of maintenance and testing equipment started up one after another. They made fine adjustments according to his position. The entire workshop seemed to revolve around him. TSK. This room of equipment can't be bought for $1 million. Cragburst turned his head to look all around with a very curious appearance. Worker Zhai answered, "The standard workshop's configuration price is $7.5 million. After 8 years of depreciation. I've added a few personal equipment here. It's convenient to use. Look, there are at least 2 areas of this hovering target that have undergone major repairs." Cragburst moved closer and discussed with Worker Zhai. "I just saw one area. The outer shell of the target has been removed and replaced with a metal net. I don't know what it's used for." "It's a fixed support, right?" Luo Nan relied on his memory to compare the diameter of the Tai Chi ball to the size of the hovering target. He felt that there were some differences. He then looked at the metal net that was constantly expanding and contracting, and he made a few guesses. "Fixed." Worker Zhai thought for a moment, but he didn't ask further. Instead, he gestured for the two to look over. "The net is just an accessory. The core problem doesn't lie here." As he spoke, he performed a few operations on the support. It was unknown how he did it, but he actually removed the metal net and placed it to the side. All that was left was a gyroscope-like object in the center. The gyroscope's rotor didn't move at this time, and the inner and outer frames were placed there in a well-behaved manner. Worker Zhai then controlled the mechanical arm, including the probe and other objects, to disassemble the gyroscope. The difficulty of disassembling the gyroscope this time seemed to be quite a bit lower than the flexible e-ink screen from back then. Within a short minute, the three heard a slight clicking sound. It seemed that some sort of mechanism had been activated. The gyroscope's central axis was disassembled from the top to the bottom, revealing an object that looked like broken glass. Next, Worker Zhai operated the mechanical arm and used special tweezers to pluck the object out. He placed it on a miniature support and slightly secured it. It could be seen at this time that the object's outer appearance was actually quite regular. It was rhombohedral, and it had clearly undergone precision processing. "A central control chip?" Cragburst asked in a low voice. His breathing slowed down a bit, afraid that he would blow this thing away. Luo Nan didn't speak. He just narrowed his eyes. Chapter 328. Luo Nan observed the rhombohedron object as well as Worker Zhai. The latter was carefully sizing up the former with great concentration. It's definitely not part of the Comet 3's design. The hovering target's control program is very simple. The main control chip has already been integrated into the shaft. And this little thing seems to be unnecessary. Cragburst asked curiously. "Unnecessary? Let's do an experiment. Studio 245. 1 Batwing Model A outer shell. Thank you." The last few sentences were directed at the warehouse in the maintenance center. As he spoke, Worker Zhai let go of the rhombohedron object. He inspected the gyroscope's rotor and its internal and external frames, especially the disassembled central shaft. He repeated this process twice before beginning to assemble it. It was obvious that Worker Zhai had deliberately ignored the tiny rhombohedron during the assembly process. He had only restored the gyroscope-shaped floating target. His speed was very fast, and he finished assembling the shell before the conveyor belt arrived. When the outer shell arrived, Worker Zhai quickly stuffed the gyroscope inside. In the end, what appeared before Luo Nan and Cragburst's eyes was a very strange bowl-shaped object. It looked like a flying saucer that wasn't very regular. Cragburst was very familiar with this toy, the Batwing Model A target aircraft. It combines high-speed flight and emergency hovering maneuverability very well. The Model B and Model C can actually be used as simple weapons platforms. They can be used in the wilderness. Worker Zhai smiled at Cragburst. This could be considered an affirmation of his expertise. Then, he let go and the big target machine floated in the air with a low hum. It slowly moved horizontally, gliding past the tips of the three people's noses, and gradually accelerated. As the speed of the target plane increased, it was like a bat, flying back and forth in the narrow workshop, but there was no collision. Worker Zhai looked at the light screen to the side. Various test data was displayed on it like a waterfall. 10 seconds later, he shook his head. I didn't discover any problems. As he spoke, Worker Zhai cast his gaze toward the miniature support. His gaze paused for a moment under the rhombohedron object. He switched to the holographic interface and displayed the repair order that Luo Nan had filled out before. I need to make a confirmation. The fault you discovered, Mr. Luo. It's a Tai Chi ball that can float in the air. Luo Nan was very cooperative as he gave a general description of the situation. Worker Zhai thought for a moment, then asked, how heavy is the Tai Chi ball? It's half the height of a person and it's made of hard metal. It should weigh at least a few hundred kilograms. Luo Nan really wasn't too sure. Worker Zhai made a sound of surprise. Cragburst coughed. Nanster, the motor of the floating target can only lift 5 kilograms at most. Worker Zhai shook his head. I don't see any changes to the floating target's propulsion and transmission mechanism. Oh, if the metal mesh is used as a support, then it can be considered a part of the transmission mechanism. However, its propulsion doesn't make sense. Is that so? Luo Nan only had a superficial understanding of the Tai Chi ball. It was very hard for him to answer such a question. After a moment of consideration, he could only pull up his contact list and call Xue Lei. At this time, Xue Lei was at home. It seemed like he was still doing a lot of training. He was panting slightly. He really didn't want to waste any time. Of course, he was familiar with the Tai Chi ball, but the problem was that he was not good with words. If he really had to describe it, he would not be able to express himself. The Tai Chi ball is able to continuously accumulate and transform the energy that is struck into various forms of rebounding force. It can also directly change the nature of the energy. Cragburst bumped Luo Nan with his shoulder. He's worthy of being your best friend. It's the same. Luo Nan ignored him. He still wanted to communicate with Xue Lei, but Xue Lei had already found a more efficient method. How about this? I recorded a video last year about training with the Tai Chi ball. I'll send it to you now. You'll understand once you see it. It's true. The video file was right next to his hand, and Xue Lei immediately began to transfer it. The network environment of the repair center was quite outstanding. Luo Nan saw that there was a lot of bandwidth, so he simply opened up a video call, allowing Xue Lei to directly participate. Xue Lei and Cragburst had met before. Luo Nan just introduced Worker Zhai to Xue Lei, and the video file was finished transferring. Worker Zhai indicated for Luo Nan to transfer the file to the wide hologram, and they watched it together. The video was recorded from a very monotonous angle. It was clear that Cragburst was recording himself. The location was in Gym Master Xiu's backyard. Xue Lei was bare-chested, revealing a body of strong muscles. He adjusted his breathing and punched. Xue Lei punched the Tai Chi ball, producing a deep sound. It was clear that Xue Lei's strength was considerable. However, the Tai Chi ball only trembled slightly. This penetrative force is truly beautiful. Cragburst clicked his tongue in admiration. He was not stingy with his praise. He turned his head to face Luo Nan and said, Leicester is truly amazing. He sent the maximum power of his fist into the center of the Tai Chi ball. The hovering target took the brunt of the force. That's why there's such an effect. Xue Lei's strikes continued without end. His speed didn't change, and the Tai Chi ball maintained its stability from beginning to end. A minute passed, and his fist suddenly increased in strength. His bare arm actually made an explosive sound out of thin air. Not only was the force of this strike fiercer, but there was also a change in the force behind it. The Tai Chi ball didn't fall back after receiving a heavy blow. Instead, it actually jumped up. It jumped over the edge of the metal bowl, reaching a height of 20 centimeters. Shui Lei connected with another punch just as it was about to sink. The hovering target jumped up once more, swaying a bit. This time, it didn't come down. The Tai Chi ball, weighing several hundred kilograms, floated in the air. It was 30 centimeters above the ground, and it began to spin. Shui Lei's expression was focused. The speed of his punches didn't change, but one punch after another brought with it an explosive sound. The hovering target was still swaying at first. Occasionally it would shift. But later on, the swaying became smaller and smaller, and the spinning speed grew faster and faster. The luminous patterns on its surface were visible even in broad daylight. The video ended here. Cragburst applauded and cheered. Shui Lei was a bit embarrassed. Luonan looked at Worker Zhai. Worker Zhai was looking at the still image of the video. Worker Zhai was a bit spellbound. He sighed in admiration, but there wasn't much surprise in his expression. Cragburst saw Worker Zhai's expression and grinned. What do you think? Do you see the trick yet? Can it be fixed? Worker Zhai lowered his head and pondered for a moment. His expression was still calm. I get the gist of it. It should be a way to store and transform external kinetic energy. The storage is like a spring. The greater the force, the greater the expected rebound. The method of transformation is quite interesting. It goes from straight force to rotational force. There's also that buoyancy. Let me do an experiment. He moved the miniature support, sending the miniature rhombohedron into a certain instrument chamber. It was fixed on all four sides. A buzzing vibration immediately rang out. It could be seen that it was imitating Shui Lei's fist strength. It was transmitting external kinetic energy into the rhombohedron. Luonan adjusted the direction of the video to let Shui Lei see the process of the experiment. The three people observed very attentively, but there were no changes to the miniature rhombohedron even after a dozen or so seconds had passed. Worker Zhai wasn't in a hurry. He soon made another adjustment. This time, he directly connected the miniature rhombohedron with electricity. The voltage and current increased, but the rhombohedron within the instrument chamber still didn't have any reaction. It's completely broken? Shui Lei was a bit disappointed. Should we try again after it's completely restored? Cragburst wanted to change his method. Worker Zhai didn't speak any further. He just stared at the instrument chamber and continued to make adjustments. A metal rod flipped up under the operating table as he operated. The top was shaped like a handle, and it was even wrapped in a layer of insulating cloth. When the metal rod was at a 90-degree angle with the ground, Worker Zhai pressed down on the handle at the top and took a deep breath. Luonan raised his eyebrows at this moment. Cragburst turned his head a bit later. The two locked gazes, confirming that subtle fluctuations were being produced on the mental plane. Hey. It's changed. It's changed. Shui Lei discovered the changes within the instrument chamber in the first instant through the high-speed network without any delay. Luonan and Cragburst turned their gazes and saw several long and slender threads extending out from the outer layer of the miniature rhombohedron. They slowly swayed up and down, left and right. He grinned and said, "So Worker Zhai is also from the society." Worker Zhai also smiled. He didn't hide it. Papercut is my recommendation, but he's still in the evaluation period. It's already been over 5 years. Shui Lei exclaimed, "It can't be, the evaluation is very strict?" He had already prepared to join the Ability User Professional Association, and the relevant procedures had already begun. With a busybody like Zhang Yingying around, he didn't have to worry about anything. Therefore, he was still at the stage where he didn't fully understand the 3 stages of the association's assessment: awakening, and vocation. When he heard 5 years, his heart skipped a beat. Worker Zhai continued to smile faintly. Luonan and Cragburst didn't explain in person. After all, speaking the truth was a bit hurtful. In terms of sensing on the mental plane, even 10 Cragbursts added together couldn't compare to Luonan. If Cragburst was able to discover the situation, then Luonan certainly wouldn't have any problems as well. Moreover, Luonan's situation was more detailed and vivid. From Luonan's perspective, Worker Zhai's mental strength and his ability to interfere with the material plane were truly too horrible to look at. Some time ago, He had a similar problem. But even if the appearance was similar, the essence was completely different. Luo Nan possessed mental strength that far exceeded normal standards, but because of the special circumstances of formatting theory, a barrier was formed between him and the material plane. In the end, he relied on coupling with the heart lantern of the eye's orifice to break through the shackles. It could be said that Worker Zhai's problem was a marvel, but his method of solving it was extraordinary. As for Worker Zhai, his problem was the simplest and most straightforward kind. His cultivation was insufficient. There was nothing praiseworthy about him on the mental plane, be it in terms of intensity or level of immersion. He simply wasn't up to standard by the standards of the society. Luo Nan remembered Zhang Yingying saying that there were 600,000 ability users in the world, but only 70,000 awakened ones. It was these 70,000 people that formed the framework of the Ability User Professional Association. Unawakened characters like Worker Zhai belonged to the category of people that the society could record, but they were normally disinclined to pay attention to. If Worker Zhai was a bit younger, like Luo Nan who was 15 or 16 years old, then perhaps there would be some anticipation. The problem was that Worker Zhai was at least 40 years old. The word, potential, no longer held any meaning. Worker Zhai found it harder and harder to hold on with these few words. He shook his head. Who's going to give me a hand? How? Just hold this handle and pour your strength into it. As long as you can form interference power, then it's fine. Then I'll do it. Chapter 330. Luo Nan understood tacitly when he saw Worker Zhai cast a gaze at him. Let me try. Hey. I'm using a penetrating strength. But Cragburst didn't let go. He was a bit unconvinced, but he was still wary on a deeper level. You tell me first. Let's not talk about Nanster. I don't seem to be much worse than Xue Lei. If he can activate the effects, why can't I? Worker Zhai responded warmly. I'm thinking about it. There are two reasons. First, my amplification device is more suited to mental ability users. You are a typical fleshly body enhanced. Your interference direction is different. Second, this miniature rhombohedron is perhaps more like our wristbands. Daily usage is one layer, developer options are another layer. Cragburst rubbed his big bald head. He felt that what Worker Zhai said made some sense. He cast his gaze at Luo Nan, who nodded. Worker Zhai's operation just now was extremely precise and meticulous. His mental strength borrowed the minute electric current of the device to realize the amplification of interference on the material plane. But when it came to you, Brother Cragburst, the amplification device's effects were completely destroyed. So it's like this. Cragburst nodded. When he looked at Worker Zhai, his gaze was a bit different. Is it electron affinity? This ability is quite good. It's especially suited for maintenance. It's like adding wings to a tiger. Which place doesn't need electricity nowadays? Worker Zhai laughed involuntarily. It's not suited. It's necessary. I'm a mental ability user. If I can't realize electron affinity, then further research would be wishful thinking. As he spoke, he cast his gaze at Luo Nan. His thoughts were rather complicated. I don't even dare to think about Mr. Luo's eyesight. We amateurs who haven't entered the door are truly left in the dust when compared to the awakened. Well, Nanster is a special case. As Cragburst spoke, he made room for Luo Nan. He added, I feel like I've seen this toy somewhere before. Luo Nan didn't speak. He took a step forward and grasped the metal rod. When Cragburst let go, the tentacles of the miniature rhombohedron retracted. Luo Nan didn't release his power in time. He didn't make any further movements until the tentacles were completely retracted. What's wrong? Cragburst didn't understand. Probably just observing. Worker Zhai was a precision-oriented, mentally enhanced. Even though he was unable to observe Luo Nan's movements on the mental plane, he was able to guess the corresponding train of thought. Cragburst said, Oh. He felt a bit embarrassed for being so suspicious of Worker Zhai just now. He pressed down on his earlobe and made a gesture for members of the society. Let's add each other as friends. Worker Zhai smiled bitterly and waved his hand. I'm sorry, I can't. You don't have an ID on the psychic wave network? There's one, but it's hard to use. Worker Zhai shook his head again. I do have some mental strength, but it's not enough to interfere with reality at any time. That's why I've only been able to wander around the periphery of the circle these past few years, relying on my craftsmanship to make a living. Fortunately, Papercut took care of me and often introduced me to some work. There was no doubt that Luo Nan had been introduced in this manner. Cragburst said in surprise. It can't be that bad? I can see that your interference force is on point. That's in this studio. Outside of here, I'm no different from an ordinary person. Worker Zhai glanced at Luo Nan. He saw that Luo Nan still hadn't made a move, so he turned his head back and said, Papercut has put in quite a bit of effort. He's tried to help me with the awakening ritual, but I'm limited by my talent. I've only gained a bit of an affinity with electrons over the past 5 years. I'm still far from being able to do anything else. I need to rely on a hearing aid in order to use the Hexa ear and access the psychic wave network. Right now, I've only reached the 2nd level. I can only watch television, listen to the radio, and so on. I have no way of interacting with others. A hearing aid? Did you design it yourself? Cragburst was able to understand that this was a type of amplification device. He was a bit curious. The people of the society, as long as they're involved in mechanical and electronic design, amplification devices have always been a hot topic. The larger the measurement, the better. You're talking about the 4-dimensional measurement. Worker Zhai was a technician. He always paid attention to similar theories. Right when he was about to discuss a thing or two with Cragburst, Luo Nan suddenly let out a long breath. His palm left the metal rod. The miniature rhombohedron was still in its initial state within the device's chamber. Compared to Worker Zhai and Cragburst's progress, it was a complete and utter regression. Xue Lei, who was watching from afar, didn't participate in the conversation between Cragburst and Worker Zhai. He focused on observing Luo Nan's methods from beginning to end. But the more he watched, the more disappointed he became. Nanster, is it no good? I want to take it out and give it a try. Luo Nan turned his head to look at Worker Zhai. This device won't be of much help to me. The direction of its amplification is mainly in strength. I feel that it would be better to go a bit deeper. Depth, strength, sensitivity, and affinity. These were the 4-dimensional measurement that Worker Zhai had just mentioned. They were the 4 basic measurement standards that the society used for mental strength. There wasn't any particularly rigorous logic or scientific basis in these measurements. They were mainly established by common usage, reflecting the fuzziness of the research of supernatural powers in the current era. Worker Zhai didn't have any objections. My specialty is in electronic equipment and mechanical design. I'm considering the internal structure of this thing. As for the mental domain, you have the final say. He opened the device chamber as he spoke, and the miniature rhombohedron was mounted on the support. It moved out and stopped at the outer edge of the workbench. Luo Nan gave it a few more glances and asked, Worker Zhai, you just said that just the kinetic energy conversion structure isn't enough. You mean? From the situation shown in the video, there are at least 2 structures that aren't shown. Maglev and energy storage. Also, I want to know where the power components are located. Worker Zhai casually drew several structural sketches on the hologram, corresponding to the kinetic energy conversion structure. From a conventional train of thought, the miniature rhombohedron is more like an integrated circuit. It's not a problem to use it in electronic equipment, but what kind of work is needed to drive the several 100-kilogram Tai Chi ball? Those tentacles are a good choice. It's fine as long as the transmission and work parts are combined together. But I haven't discovered the corresponding structural design. Luo Nan had a general understanding. What Worker Zhai means is that there should be more tentacles to form more structures. Worker Zhai used an electronic pen to tap the hologram. Dynamic, precise, and sufficiently firm. Cragburst listened to them speak, and a certain train of thought from before resurfaced. It became clearer and clearer, separated only by a thin layer of paper. He rubbed his forehead forcefully. Tentacles. Structure. Precision. Ha! What's that again? Luo Nan laughed and asked. In other words, the miniature rhombohedron driving the Tai Chi ball is very likely to be accomplished through those tentacles? Worker Zhai nodded, and Cragburst clapped his hands forcefully. Holy crap! The dynamo core! Luo Nan didn't say anything more. He took a deep breath, and his towering iceberg-like mental strength resonated with the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. Incorporeal lightning crackled and scuttled, forming a seemingly substantial bolt of lightning in the depths of the cracks in his eyes. The miniature rhombohedron inexplicably trembled at the focus of his gaze. This object couldn't compare to the external neuron. It couldn't compare to Jack's Deep Sea Type 4, but the sparkle on the mental plane and the corresponding spark of lightning in Luo Nan's eyes truly belonged to the dynamo core. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.